Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. I've always believed life should make sense. Numbers, columns, pages of transactions, they all form patterns that a patient mind can decode. My name is James Carter, and I pride myself on being that patient mind. Professionally, people call me a CPA. I lead a small audit team. Lydia, Grace, Nathan, Sophie, and Zoe. Each is skilled in their own right as I am with spreadsheets and general ledgers. I know it sounds dull to some, but to me, it's like unraveling secret stories hidden in the math. Growing up, I found that people lie easily, but numbers rarely do. They're consistent. They beg to be put in the right place. As a teenager, I'd pore over fictional detective stories while also solving puzzle books about accounting basics. By the time I hit college, numbers were my second language. Then came my license, a handful of specialized certifications, and eventually a chance to open my own small firm. Standing in the middle of it all, I can't help but feel a warm sense of pride. My team calls me the architect of order behind my back, though never to my face. Lydia, my senior accountant, accidentally let it slip one day after I saved our biggest client from an IRS bloodbath. Sure, I teased her for being dramatic, but the nickname stuck. And secretly, I kind of like it. On a typical morning, I stroll into our open concept office and greet whoever's in early. Lydia's always the first one at her desk, coffee in hand, scanning the day's tasks in a color-coded spreadsheet. She's older than me by a few years, but she's warm, sharp, and fiercely protective of the team. Grace, who has a background in forensic auditing, sits next to Lydia, her eyes always on the lookout for anomalies. Nathan and Zoe are the computer wizards. They can coax data out of archaic systems no matter how dusty the servers. Sophie, our newest addition, has an uncanny ability to track the smallest details in a messy ledger. They're not just colleagues, they're family. And that comfort extends to my home life too, or at least it did until recently. My wife, Elena, and I have been married for 8 years. I describe us as the steady, cozy type. Bookstore dates, streaming shows on the couch, or discovering tiny restaurants on random weekends. She works for a tech firm called Horizon Research. Her role involves dealing with big clients, budgets, marketing proposals, that sort of thing. We used to joke that between the two of us, we had the entire corporate world covered, me with the numbers, her with the creative pitch. We share a 2-bedroom condo a short drive from my firm. It's a comfortable place with just enough space to imagine 1 or 2 kids down the line, if life works out that way. Elena used to say it wasn't about the square footage, but about how we filled the rooms with laughter and peace. Those little phrases remain pinned to the fridge under a magnet from our honeymoon. Sometimes I catch myself smiling at the thought of how lucky we've been. So that's me, a methodical accountant with a small loyal team, and a husband who's always believed my marriage was as sturdy as the numbers I rely on. If you'd asked me a few months ago, I'd have said there was no safer bet than the love Elena and I share. But lately, a subtle unease has crept in, the kind that makes me wake up earlier than usual, stare at the walls in the dawn light, and wonder why my heart feels heavier than it should. It's nothing specific, or so I tell myself. Elena's been busy. Her job demands are ramping up, especially after her firm landed a major new client. She's coming home later, leaving earlier, and answering the phone in hushed tones sometimes. But if you press me, I can't point to a single argument or problem. We've had a couple of mild spats, sure, maybe about scheduling or forgetting to buy groceries. But nothing big. When the phone rings at the office on a Tuesday morning, I pick it up to find a new client on the line, Titan Development Group. They're under some state investigation for mismanaged contracts, suspicious invoices, or something along those lines. The job is massive. The lead contact tells me they require immediate help, so I sense the challenge. Complicated, messy books, large sums of money, and a short timeline to piece it all together. Perfect. This is what I do. I gather the team, summarizing Titan's predicament. Lydia's eyes sparkle with interest. Big messy audits are her bread and butter. Nathan jokes about packing an emergency sleeping bag in the office. Sophie quietly jots down notes, her methodical mind already sorting the steps. I glance at the clock. My chest tightens with a strange mix of excitement and apprehension I can't quite label. After we finalize the scope, I pause. Elena's meeting schedule from last night flickers in my mind. I tried to text her about dinner. No reply came until almost midnight. She'd apologized, said a conference call ran later than expected. I believed her, I still do. But something about the tension in her voice unsettled me. I catch Lydia studying me with a furrowed brow, and I plaster on a reassuring smile. All right, team, I say, clearing my throat. Let's get it done. Titan development's a priority. We'll handle the initial data pull on site. They've reserved offices for us on the top floor. We meet tomorrow at 8 a.m. sharp at their building. They hustle off to pack equipment and finalize ongoing tasks before we dive headlong into Titan's project. I remain behind, listening to the hum of the air conditioner, letting the swirl of anxieties settle. Of course, it's just stress. I've handled far bigger fish in my career. The numbers will line up eventually, no matter how chaotic they look at first glance. I fish out my phone and shoot a quick text to Elena. Heading out early tomorrow for a new project. You free for a late dinner? A minute later, the screen remains blank. Then 2 minutes. Then 5. I shrug, slip the phone back into my pocket, telling myself she must be in a meeting. On my drive home that evening, traffic moves slower than usual. I pass a billboard for some property advertisement, an idyllic suburban house with a picket fence. Normally, I'd imagine Elena and me in a setting like that. We've talked about it. A yard, maybe a dog, definitely a small garden where she can grow rosemary. But now, the thought doesn't give me the usual wave of contentment. Instead, a strange uncertainty digs into my chest. I brush it aside, blame it on being overtired, and vow to rest once I'm home. Elena isn't back yet when I arrive. The condo feels silent, the subtle glow of the evening sun falling across our living room floor. I microwave some leftover pasta. By the time the clock hits 9 p.m., she texts, "So sorry, still finishing up work." Don't wait up. That's it. I fall asleep on the couch, the swirl of half-finished spreadsheets and unsaid words drifting in my head. Even in my dreams, I see columns of numbers that never add up right, and somehow I can't find the missing figure. By 8 the next morning, my team and I stand in the gleaming lobby of Titan Development Group. The place exudes money, polished marble floors, towering floral arrangements, and a wall of tinted windows revealing the city skyline. This is no humble construction firm. They build entire neighborhoods, dabble in large-scale infrastructure, and have big political connections. It's rare they'd call in outside auditors, especially on short notice, but the rumors floating around suggest a serious investigation by the state. Our job is to clarify what's real. I imagine spreadsheets stuffed with questionable invoices, suspicious expense claims, or miscalculated bids. I feel a small thrill. Titan might be the biggest puzzle I've tackled in years. Mr. Carter? A polished woman in a blazer, Stephanie, if I recall, greets me. We've prepared offices on the 21st floor for your team. The CFO's assistant will be up shortly to help you settle in. We board an elevator that whooshes upward in silence. Everyone's armed with laptops, external drives, and that quiet determination of a team about to face a mountain of data. I glance at Lydia. She's scanning her phone. Grace's brow is knitted in concentration. Nathan and Zoe whisper about the building's security system. Sophie remains calm, hugging her leather-bound notebook. When we step off, I spot row upon row of glass-walled offices. Some are vacant, others half-lit, forming a sleek corridor that reflects my own figure as I pass. Stephanie leads us to a suite at the end. It's huge, plush carpet, mahogany desks, and an antique telescope by a massive window. At first, I chuckle. Someone apparently took the phrase corporate grandeur to heart. The telescope points across the street to another skyscraper. Probably decorative, I think, but you never know. We each claim a workspace. Mine is at one end of a corridor. The rest of the team sets up near the opposite end. This separation feels odd. Usually, I like being within earshot, but Titan insisted we take the best offices. The CFO probably wants to impress us, or keep tabs on us. Hard to say. James. Sophie pokes her head in my office. We're booting up. Their system's a patchwork of outdated software, so it might take us a while to sync. Want anything from the break room? Coffee if they've got it. Thanks, Sophie. She disappears, and I'm alone in a space that smells faintly of leather and old cologne. The desk is majestic, with a matching chair that creaks when I shift my weight. Plaques and trophies line a bookshelf. A giant stuffed sailfish looms from the wall, as if frozen mid-leap. The entire atmosphere screams extravagance. I fire up my laptop, scanning Titan's preliminary files, budgets, contracts, internal memos. This is the calm before the storm, that quiet stage where I take measure of the labyrinth I must solve. I slip into that methodical headspace. Numbers, data, consistency. My comfort zone. An hour later, the phone rings. It's an internal line. "Mr. Carter," a male voice says. "We've got a request from the CFO's office. Could you come down to sign some confidentiality forms?" I wait for Grace to watch the door, then head out. Down the corridor, past sophisticated artwork, I arrive at the CFO's assistant's desk. A well-mannered older gentleman, Robert, greets me. He slides over a stack of legal forms, confidentiality and data protection disclaimers. I sign each with mechanical efficiency, listening half-heartedly to him chat about how Titan invests in property all across the state, not just the city, but tries to keep its paperwork in order. I keep a polite smile, not letting on that I already suspect a deep mess behind the scenes. When I return, the entire corridor is silent. My team is busy gathering digital records. I settle at my desk, sipping the coffee Sophie left for me. With my laptop open, I create a priority list. 1. Identify the questionable costs. 2. Cross-check them with internal memos. 3. Isolate any anomalies that point to fraud. Busy work, but crucial. Eventually, the tension in my eyes forces me to look away from the screen. I notice that telescope again, looking slightly out of place in a corporate setting. Curiosity wins out. I stroll over and peer through it, expecting to see smudged glass or a misaligned lens. Instead, I'm surprised to find it's functional, maybe even high-end. The building across the street is Horizon Research, though I initially can't read the small sign. My vantage point, from the 21st floor, lines up neatly with their 20th. I see silhouettes of desks, frosted glass meeting rooms, the blur of office workers. The sun reflects off the mirrored windows. Curiously, the lens seems to cut the glare enough to see inside more clearly. I step back, feeling a bizarre jolt. That building is Elena's workplace. I recall her mentioning they'd moved offices to a bigger suite on the 20th floor. A fleeting thought. What if I spot her in there? Would she wave? Laugh at me snooping? It's silly. I push it aside, though part of me is amused by the coincidence. Before I can lose myself in daydreams, Nathan appears in the doorway. "James, we found a big chunk of outdated spreadsheets. Might be old construction budgets. Sophie's trying to parse them, but it's messy. Mind taking a look?" "Sure." I abandon the telescope and rejoin the fray. The rest of the day slips by in a haze of mental calculations, polite Titan staff dropping in to see if we need anything, and my team huddling around monitors. By the time we finish, it's past 7 in the evening, and we hardly notice the city lights glowing outside. Stepping into the elevator to leave, I check my phone. Elena's text, "Working late again. Maybe tomorrow?" My heart sinks a bit, but I remind myself we both have demanding jobs. I let it go. In the parking garage, Lydia jokes that at this rate, we'll solve Titan's crisis in record time. Nathan quips that we'll probably find more hidden skeletons. I grin, but there's a small tug in my chest that says work might not be the only place with skeletons. It's an unformed worry, so I shrug it off, drive home, and vow to get a proper night's sleep for day 2. Most of my adult life has been shaped by the belief that good foundations stand the test of time. That idea inspired Elena and me from our earliest days. We used to talk about building a future, a nice house, maybe in a quiet neighborhood not too far from the city. She adores historical architecture, claims older homes have more soul. I used to tease her. Numbers are my domain, but intangible souls? I'd smile and say if it had the right purchase price, I'd be open-minded. We met back in college. She was finishing her marketing degree, and I was deep in advanced accounting courses. She saw me hunched over in the student commons, dissecting a monstrous textbook. She asked to borrow a highlighter. I remember the sunlight catching the gold flecks in her eyes. She smiled, I stuttered something, and that was that. My life pivoted, quietly but surely. Those early years were full of studying side by side, late-night ramen in the dorm lounge, dreams of the future. Even after graduation, when we each landed jobs in different parts of the city, we'd carve out time to watch old detective movies or go for midnight walks. Before long, A ring on her finger sealed our shared hopes. Sitting in Titan's borrowed office this morning, I'm lost in that memory. The hush of the space and the silent hum of the building's ventilation lulls me. I can see the reflection of my wedding band in the laptop screen. It's faint, but it's there. Echoes of trust, I think. That's what Elena and I used to share. James. Lydia's voice jars me. I blink back into the present. She's standing at my doorway, wearing a concerned look. Everything okay? Yeah, sorry. Must have zoned out. I manage a sheepish grin. What's up? Lydia explains they've found contradictory data sets. One document says Titan paid for a certain batch of materials at location A, while another states the same materials were supposedly used at location B. It might be a simple clerical error, or something worse. I rub my eyes, nod. Let's dig deeper. Grab Grace. Compare with any internal logs. I'll check last year's quarterlies to see if there's a pattern. She leaves, and I click open a brand new spreadsheet. Methodically, I list each location, cross-referencing purchase orders. It's mundane, yet I settle into the rhythm quickly. The monotony becomes a form of solace, reminding me that with patience, I can unravel anything. Or so I've always believed. Just after noon, Sophie delivers lunch. Sandwiches and bottled water, a small respite from the thick files. We chat briefly. She mentions the building's cafeteria is overpriced but convenient. I laugh and say everything about Titan seems bigger than necessary. After she leaves, I eat in near silence. As the afternoon stretches, I feel an ache in my shoulders from hunching over. Needing a breather, I wander to the giant window. The city skyline is a jumble of shapes, all tinted by the glass. Instinctively, my eyes stray to that antique telescope again. This time, curiosity battles caution. I know I might see Elena's office if I look, but I also know she'd be busy. Still, the idle wonder keeps pulling me. Eventually, I cave. I stand behind the telescope, adjusting the focus ring carefully. The sunlight outside is harsh. For a moment, everything blurs. A slight turn of the knob, there. A corridor in the building across the street. It's a partial view, something like an open-plan layout. I see tall glass walls, a large reception desk, then the reflection from tinted windows. People move around in business attire. It's none of my business, obviously, so I back off. I'm turning away when a flicker of movement catches my eye. A figure in a corner office glances up. It's a woman with auburn hair, not Elena, but I realize there's a good chance Elena's somewhere on that same floor. Focus, James, I tell myself. This is borderline silly. I return to my desk. But the thought lingers. If I wave through that telescope, would Elena notice? That evening, I close out of Titan's files and join the team in the hallway for a debrief. Nathan's discovered missing lines in the general ledger. Grace found multiple vendor addresses that lead nowhere. Zoe is analyzing receipts. The entire company's financial skeleton rattles with secrets. We plan for an extra week here, maybe more. On the drive home, I think about how easy it is to miss details, just like the executives at Titan might have missed these glaring errors. Or maybe they saw them and hoped no one else would. A half-remembered phrase from Elena pops in my mind. We see only what we want to see. She said it once after we watched a documentary about illusions. The line stings me now, as if there's more weight to it than just illusions. I arrive at the condo, the living room dimly lit by a single lamp. The clock reads 9 p.m. No sign of Elena. Her text says she had to entertain a visiting VP from out of town. Might be back late. A quick dinner left over is all I manage. Then I slump onto the couch, letting the flickering TV keep me company. A memory surfaces unbidden, last year's Paris trip. We'd saved for it bit by bit. My rational approach, her impulse to see the Louvre. We strolled the streets at night, lights on the Seine dancing against the water. She pulled me closer on a bridge, whispered that she couldn't imagine being with anyone else. That moment felt like truth incarnate. I shake off the memory, vaguely unsettled. There's no reason to think anything's changed. People grow busy. Life gets complicated. I should trust what I know. Elena's dedicated to her career. She's told me time and again how crucial these big deals are for her future. So I file away my doubts, determined not to be that paranoid husband who reads hidden meanings into every canceled dinner or text response. I have enough on my plate with Titan as it is. Before heading to bed, I scribble a note. Miss you. Let's talk soon, and leave it on the kitchen counter. Maybe a simple reminder will spark a return to the normalcy I crave. Then I slip under the covers alone, wondering if tomorrow's sunrise will bring clarity or just more of the same. Morning comes earlier than I'd like. I ignore the alarm until I can't. Elena's side of the bed is untouched. Checking my phone, I see a brief text from her at 2 a.m. apologizing for the unpredictable schedule. No mention of when she'll be home. My chest tightens, but I have no choice except to carry on. At Titan, the day starts much like before, except the CFO drops by, telling me how urgent it is we work faster. Something about state inspectors breathing down their neck. He's polite but uneasy, as though he suspects we'll uncover more than he wants to admit. I keep my expressions neutral, taking notes. No point in stirring the pot prematurely. By lunchtime, the entire team is knee-deep in data. Documents keep pouring in, some so poorly organized that Lydia actually laughs out loud. It's like a jigsaw puzzle where half the pieces are missing, she mutters. I grin at her frustration-turned humor. A couple hours later, I feel my head pounding. The numbers swirl. I decide to rest my eyes, leaning back in the oversized office chair. Above me, a ceiling fan spins slowly, reminiscent of the steady tick-tick of a clock. My mind drifts to Elena again. That old anxiety creeps up, like a quiet alarm that you can't quite shut off. I stare at the silent phone on my desk, then glance toward the telescope. For reasons I can't entirely explain, I'm drawn to it again. Maybe it's a mental break or plain curiosity. I approach, pressing my eye to the lens, adjusting the focus. The building across the street comes into view. This time, the angle shows me a corner office I don't recall noticing before. The glare is less intense, so the lens picks up clearer detail. Suddenly, I see a familiar silhouette stepping into frame. Long brown hair, posture I've known for almost a decade. My pulse spikes. That's Elena. She's wearing a fitted blazer, gesturing with her hands. She's talking to someone. Another figure steps closer, tall, broad-shouldered. Could be a colleague or manager. I try to make out the face, but the reflection from the window is tricky. They seem to talk intently. Elena nods, leaning against her desk. He stands close, closer than I'd expect for a casual conversation. A pang of discomfort seizes my chest. I remind myself I'm being silly. People stand near each other all the time in offices, especially if they're discussing something urgent. But as I watch, she slips off her shoes, flexing her feet as if to relax. The man sets a hand on her shoulder momentarily. My stomach twists. Is that normal office behavior? I step back from the telescope, heart thudding. My rational mind tries to override the wave of paranoia. James, don't jump to conclusions. Yet a bizarre feeling that something is off churns inside me. Could be a friendly gesture, or some new manager offering support for a tough project. But it's not typical. Not for Elena. I catch myself practically pacing around the telescope. The slow, dramatic hush in the room seems to amplify every anxious thought. Finally, I settle, telling myself, wait, this is borderline unhinged. Stop spying. But curiosity, or maybe that flicker of fear, wins out again. I lean back in. They're still talking. The man rubs his neck and laughs. Elena smiles, her signature smile, the one that used to be meant for me. My cheeks flush. I can't hear a thing, obviously, but I witness how her posture shifts, like she's comfortable, or at least not bothered by his presence. Then they part ways. He leaves the office, shutting the door behind him. Elena stays behind, crosses to her desk, checks something on her computer, and then she's out of view. The lens only captures the barest corner of the room. My palms are damp. I exhale, forcing myself to remain calm. She's allowed to have colleagues, have conversations. But that voice in my head persists. Why have I never heard of this guy if he's so close that he touches her shoulder like that? In that moment, there's a knock at my door. I nearly jump. Zoe walks in with a question about scanned invoices. I answer automatically, mind half somewhere else. She notices my jittery vibe. You okay, boss? I swallow. Yeah, just got lost in thought. Zoe shrugs and heads out. But the seed is planted. Something is not quite right with Elena, her schedule, and the man I just saw. Over the next couple hours, I work feverishly to distract myself. Numbers usually calm me, but now they feel more like a smokescreen. At 6 p.m., we break for dinner. I follow Lydia down to the cafeteria, my appetite almost non-existent. She notices. Your mind's not on the job, is it? I rub my forehead. Just personal stuff, Lydia. I'm sure it's nothing. She says nothing else, but her sympathetic gaze lingers. Back upstairs, the day winds down. My phone buzzes with a single line from Elena. Late again. Sorry. I consider asking about that coworker, but I hesitate. It feels wrong to bring it up out of the blue, especially by text. Around 8 p.m., everyone packs up to leave. I decide to linger for half an hour, telling them I want to finish a quick review. The office empties. Alone, I can't resist one more peek through that telescope. The lights across the street glow in different windows. A hush falls as I rotate the scope, scanning floor by floor. Eventually, I spot Elena's office again. Dark, no sign of movement. Maybe she's left. But the uneasy feeling remains lodged in my gut. I know I saw something. A casual intimacy that didn't fit a typical coworker relationship. The small physical gestures, the hush in her texts, the missed dinners. I can't form a coherent explanation other than, something is wrong. Before leaving, I draft an email to myself, a digital note. Suspicions Elena. Must not jump to conclusions. It sounds ridiculous, but the simple act of writing it helps me keep a grip on reality. I shut down my laptop, stepping into the elevator, letting the gloom of the evening swallow me. The drive home is quiet. No calls, no messages, just the hum of the city passing by. Inside the condo, I find a half-finished note from Elena on the table. Don't worry about me. I'm trying to get ahead at work. We'll talk soon. The words feel hollow. My mind replays her image in that office, with that stranger's hand on her shoulder. Did she brush it off politely? Did she invite it? Sleep doesn't come easily. I toss and turn, half expecting the door to open and Elena to walk in with explanations, maybe apologies for her schedule. But the hours crawl by, leaving me alone. The seeds of suspicion are planted, and they are growing fast, like a crack in the foundation I used to call our perfect marriage. I sat alone in that Titan development office for nearly an hour after my shock subsided. My body still felt shaky, like I'd sprinted 2 miles without pausing for breath. On the surface, I probably appeared calm, typing out lines of data on my laptop. But my mind was spinning 1,000 miles an hour, grappling with the ugly fact that Elena, my wife, my partner, was tangled up with Victor Hayes, a man I'd seen for less than a minute through that telescope. I should have confronted her right away. Maybe a phone call demanding answers, or a furious text. But something in me said it wouldn't help. Maybe I was scared to hear the lie in her voice, or to confirm the truth that I'd glimpsed. Instead, I needed a plan. The moment the wave of hurt broke inside me, my methodical instincts took over. Numbers man. Problem solver. I had to do this systematically. When I finally left the building, it was almost dark. The city lights danced along the street, and a cool breeze hit my face. The next day was Saturday, so Titan's offices would be quiet. I decided to call an impromptu meeting with my team at my own firm's space. It was unusual. Weekend gatherings were not our norm, but their unwavering support was exactly what I needed. They already had an inkling something was wrong with me. I intended to tell them the whole story now. At 8 the next morning, I walked into Carter & Associates, my small but comfortable headquarters. The front lobby smelled faintly of coffee, courtesy of Lydia, who always arrived early if I asked. Nathan lounged by the reception desk, fiddling with his phone. Sophie stood quietly near the windows. Grace and Zoe arrived moments later, each exchanging worried looks. None of them knew the exact reason for this emergency meeting, but they could sense it wasn't about Titan's audit. I cleared my throat. Thanks for coming on such short notice. Let's go to the conference room. All 5 followed, the air humming with tension. Once we settled, I locked the door. My reflection stared back at me in the glass panel, a man with circles under his eyes, hair unkempt from restless sleep. Not exactly the unflappable CPA they were used to. I'll cut to the chase, I began. My voice cracked slightly, so I took a deep breath. This is personal. I almost couldn't say the words. I found out Elena is having an affair. A stunned hush fell. Lydia pressed her hand to her mouth. Sophie glanced down, tears glistening in her eyes even though we weren't especially close. Nathan muttered, "Oh man," under his breath. Zoe, arms folded, stared at me like she was waiting for a cue to leap into action. I know it sounds insane, but I saw her, I said softly. She's involved with a guy named Victor Hayes at her office. I watched them through a telescope at Titan's building. I paused, letting the weight of it settle. And it might be worse than just him. I'm worried there's more. Grace's eyebrows rose. More? Why do you think that? It's a gut feeling. The way she's been so distant, the random canceled dinners. And I recognized. My throat tightened. I recognized something in her face that I can't explain. But it wasn't surprise or hesitation. It was comfort with him. Like this has been going on for a while. Zoe tapped the table, voice low. What do you need from us? I hesitated, looking around. Their expressions reminded me of soldiers waiting for orders. They might tease me for drama under normal circumstances, but not now. They were here, on my side, ready to help. I can't just confront her with partial information, I said. She might lie, or I'll get emotional and lose my head. I need proof. Definitive proof of everything. Only then can I decide what to do. Nathan exchanged a glance with Sophie. Okay, so you want to investigate Elena's activities? He asked. Emails, schedules, calls. That's digital infiltration, James. It's dicey. I nodded. I know. It's morally gray. But this isn't just about petty jealousy. If she's sleeping with co-workers to climb the ladder, or if there's a bigger pattern, I need the facts. My jaw clenched. I won't do anything reckless. We'll gather real evidence first. Lydia frowned. Are you sure you want to go down this path? There's no turning back once we start poking around her private life. I don't want you regretting it. The question gave me pause. Did I have the stomach for it? My heart pounded, remembering the scene from the telescope. That searing image of Elena leaning into another man. I have to, I said finally. I can't just walk away with illusions. I need clarity. A moment passed in silence. Then Zoe stepped closer. I have a friend, Miguel. He's a private investigator by trade. If you want physical surveillance, he can set up some cameras or do discreet checks. Might be simpler than us fumbling around the city. Nathan piped in. Meanwhile, Sophie and I can see if Horizon systems have any vulnerabilities. We'd keep it hush-hush. Might find her digital footprints. He shrugged, glancing at me. Up to you, boss. I swallowed. Yes, let's do it carefully. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. We treat this like an audit assignment, but one with personal stakes. Gather data, interpret, then decide the next step. Grace, typically the quiet presence, chimed in. We need some guidelines, though. We're not crossing lines that get us into legal trouble, right? Yeah. No random hacking of innocent employees, Lydia added. We'll focus on Elena's activity, specifically. And if we do come across info about other men, fine, but let's not blast the entire company. I nodded. Understood. I want to keep it contained. We spent the next hour mapping a strategy. Zoe promised to reach out to Miguel for potential discrete camera setups, maybe near Elena's building or even inside my own home if needed, though that thought made my stomach twist. Sophie asked to run an initial check on Elena's LinkedIn, her public data, see if her daily schedule matched up with her claims. Grace volunteered to approach a friend in Horizon's finance department, gleaning if Elena's name had popped up in any rumors. Nathan would coordinate the digital infiltration piece with his specialized software. Meanwhile, Lydia would stand by for moral support and help keep me from emotionally imploding. By the time we ended, I felt both drained and oddly relieved. The intense hush in the conference room gave way to quiet determination. Even though my heart ached, at least I had a plan. I wasn't wallowing in confusion anymore. I was doing something. Before they dispersed, Lydia set a hand gently on my shoulder. James, don't forget to eat and sleep, she said kindly. We'll figure this out, but you need your strength. I gave a weak smile. Thanks, Lydia. I'll try. After the others left, Sophie lingered. I'm sorry you're going through this, she whispered, eyes round with concern. If you need someone to talk to, not just about the hacking stuff, you can call me. I nodded, a lump in my throat. I appreciate that. As she walked away, a wave of conflicting emotions welled up. Fury at Elena for betraying me, heartbreak because I still loved her, and gratitude for the people who stood behind me unconditionally. I realized that as much as I craved the simple logic of a ledger, life didn't always sum up neatly. Emotions were messy. Betrayal, even messier. That night, I didn't go home immediately. I found myself driving aimlessly through the city, headlights bouncing off towering buildings. At a random cafe, I grabbed a late dinner, a grilled cheese and tomato soup, the kind of comfort food I hadn't eaten since college. People around me chatted about weekend plans, date nights, or groceries. I sat there, silent, as if in another dimension. Finally, close to midnight, I returned to my condo. The place felt sterile, haunted by Elena's absence. I sank onto the couch, scanning the room for any subtle shift, any sign that she'd been here recently. Everything looked the same, too neat. My phone displayed no messages from her. No missed calls. Eventually, I retreated to bed. My pillow felt cold. My heart pounded with the knowledge that tomorrow, I'd step into an even darker realm, investigating my own wife, determined to drag hidden truths into the light. I stared at the ceiling until exhaustion pulled me under. Sunday morning arrived with a gray overcast sky, the kind that can't decide if it wants to rain or not. I was already up by 5, my body running on nervous energy. By 6, I was at our firm's office again, letting Nathan and Sophie in. They looked tired but ready, thermoses of coffee in hand. Nathan had set up his personal rig in a back corner of the main office. Several monitors lined a makeshift desk, each displaying different lines of code or server-locating prompts. Sophie hovered beside him, scanning a guidebook of network vulnerabilities. I'd known they were good at data retrieval. Our work sometimes required it if clients lost access to old systems, but I'd never asked them to do anything so personal, so invasive. I pulled a chair next to them. Let's keep this targeted, I reminded them quietly. Just Elena's accounts, if possible. If you see other personal stuff, skip it. We're not here to blow up her entire company. Inside, my gut clenched. I still couldn't believe my life had turned into this cloak and dagger scenario. Nathan nodded, slipping on a pair of noise-canceling headphones. Understood. We'll start with the most direct route, her Horizon email. Public records show the domain they use. Let's see if the system has known exploits. Sophie tapped the keyboard. Her calm, steady presence was a comfort. Remember to also check her calendar app if they have one. She's bound to have meeting invites or notes on who she's meeting. For the next 20 minutes, all I heard were the rhythmic clicks of keys and the occasional hum of the computer fans. I paced behind them, half wishing I could do something to help, half terrified of what they might find. My phone buzzed once, Lydia texting me to see if I was all right. I texted back a short yes. Finally, Nathan exhaled. Okay, so they have a multi-tiered security system. Not surprising. But I see a path if we can simulate a remote login. I'll need Elena's approximate password. Any guesses? My mind raced. Elena's tastes had changed over the years, but she was always consistent about one weird detail. She liked old detective novels. I recalled the name of her favorite sleuth from some 1950s series. Try Phyllis Troy 1958, with maybe an exclamation or numbers, I suggested, my cheeks flushing with the awkwardness of guessing my wife's password for a hack. He typed it in. No luck. Another variation maybe. I offered a few others. Her birth date plus a random word she once used. Sophie tried them systematically. After a handful of rejections, a window popped up. Nathan whistled. We're in. That's kinda surprising. She used a variant of the Phyllis Troy name plus her mother's birth year. My heart hammered. So that's the password for her work email. I almost felt guilty for a second, but the memory of her leaning toward Victor overpowered everything. Check her inbox and calendar, I said quietly. As lines of data rushed across the screen, Sophie filtered out random HR memos and mass newsletters. Then came the personal messages, some with subject lines referencing events, some referencing projects. Then we saw a folder titled Special. The capital letters felt ominous. Sophie hovered the cursor over it, glancing at me. I swallowed hard. Open it. Inside were dozens of emails between Elena and someone labeled VH. My breath caught. Victor Hayes, presumably. The subject lines varied from lunch plan to about last night. Nathan cast me a sympathetic glance and started opening them. The first one read harmless enough. Talk about meeting schedules, quick references to a project. But as they scrolled deeper, the tone shifted. Mentions of missing you and next time at the hotel surfaced. My world tilted. Each line stung worse than the last. It's real, my brain screamed. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding or a brief fling. It looked like a full-blown affair, documented in black and white. I steadied myself. Anything else? Sophie bit her lip. Yeah, there are subfolders. Wait here. She clicked a folder labeled Evenings, which contained a series of email attachments, receipts for restaurants, bar tabs, even a concert ticket stub. Dates matched times Elena told me she was working late. The betrayal felt infinite. Nathan cleared his throat. There's also a chain of emails referencing more guys. Thomas, Philip, Daniel. She's emailing them about. Well, it's not explicit here, but it's definitely not just business talk. See these lines? Thanks for covering in the meeting. I owe you dinner or more. Winky face. That's from 2 months ago. My insides twisted. It's more than one man. The shock I'd felt seeing Victor multiplied. My wife was coordinating something with multiple colleagues. The world went fuzzy for a moment. I inhaled carefully, refusing to crumble now. Sophie slowly turned her chair. James, I'm so sorry. I rubbed my temples. It is what it is, I managed, voice hollow. Keep copies of everything. We need to confirm timelines, see if there's overlap with these guys. Nathan nodded, his expression grim. We'll piece it together. You sure you want all these details? I closed my eyes. I need to know how deep it goes. If it's really multiple men, we have to confirm that. I can't fight illusions. They continued downloading relevant emails. As they worked, I noticed Sophie's eyes brimming with empathy. She put a hand on my shoulder briefly. We'll handle the technical side. You take a breather. I forced a nod, stepping out into the hallway. My heart pounded in my ears. Multiple men. The facts are worse than my fears. I found myself leaning against the corridor wall, eyes closed, replaying every memory with Elena. Was she lying that entire time? Or did it start small and spiral? A few minutes later, Nathan and Sophie joined me. He spoke in a low tone. We have enough to confirm she's meeting at least 4 men, all from her management chain at Horizon. The messages mention them covering for each other, rotating lunch breaks, booking hotel rooms under aliases. He paused. We also saw references to group meetups. I'm not sure how else to phrase it. My stomach lurched. Group? I clenched my fists. The anger felt like a red-hot spike in my chest, but I had to keep it together. Thank you for telling me, I whispered. Just save it all. Sophie nodded, swallowing. I can't imagine how you feel. I shook my head, not trusting my words. The heartbreak threatened to choke me, but I swallowed it down. We keep going, I rasped. Next step, I want actual proof beyond emails if possible. Photos, videos. Something I can't dismiss as a hack or misunderstanding. They exchanged looks. Nathan spoke gently. We can do more. We can see if we can tap into the security cameras at Horizon, or at least identify the ones we can access. Or Zoe's friend, the PI, can place a covert camera near her office. But it gets riskier. I nodded. We'll do it carefully. She can't suspect anything. I need to see the truth for myself. They said no more. We went back to the main room, where Grace and Lydia had arrived. They took one look at our faces and knew we had found something. I gave a succinct summary, keeping my voice even. Lydia swore under her breath, while Grace stiffened in anger on my behalf. All right, we'll move step by step, Lydia said, mustering her usual calm. We'll confirm the facts, and you'll decide how to proceed. Whatever you choose, we're here. I nodded, my throat thick. In that moment, I realized how much I depended on my team's strength. Without them, I might have crumpled. I told them I needed a bit of air, so we called a break. Nathan went to lock up the data, Sophie to back it up on a secure external drive. Meanwhile, Lydia and Grace quietly discussed contacting Zoe's PI friend, Miguel, about physical surveillance. I stood near the window, watching the city's gray sky shift to a faint drizzle. Each raindrop hitting the glass felt like an echo of my pounding heart. It's real, I thought again. Elena is with 4 men. 4. The quiet tapping of raindrops sounded like a slow-motion funeral march. By Monday morning, the mood in our office was somber but determined. We'd moved from shock to action. Zoe had spent Sunday evening talking to her investigator friend, Miguel Carranza, a soft-spoken ex-cop with a discreet approach. He agreed to install telescopes and small, high-resolution cameras in strategic locations around Horizon's high-rise. The plan was delicate. Horizon's security patrolled the perimeter, and we didn't want to draw unwanted attention. Miguel met us at a coffee shop near Horizon's building for a quick briefing. The interior was cozy, with only a few patrons sipping lattes or checking their phones. We gathered in a corner booth, the hiss of the espresso machine masking our low voices. Here's the deal, Miguel began. He had a quiet confidence about him, plus a slight New Mexico accent. I can place a camera across the street, in an office suite 1 floor above or below Elena's. I know a landlord who owes me a favor. The lens can capture the windows of her department. But if there's reflective glass, we'll need a more advanced approach. Zoe nodded. We have a polarizing filter for telescopes that can reduce glare. Nathan can adapt it. Miguel's eyebrows rose. Perfect. That'll help. Next, we'll set up a time schedule for me or a colleague to retrieve the footage so we don't rely on a wireless feed. Less chance of hacking detection. My stomach felt knotted, but I managed a level tone. And what about inside Horizon? Security cameras? Miguel shrugged. We can't just hijack them easily unless your computer geniuses, he nodded at Nathan and Zoe, can find a backdoor. Still, that might be higher risk. I recommend we start with an external vantage point. If Elena's meeting these men in her office, we'll see it eventually. Lydia, who'd tagged along for moral support, sipped her cappuccino. James, are you sure about this? Once we have video of her with them, you can't unsee it. Her words stung because they reflected my deepest fear. Yet the memory of those emails and Elena's scheduled lunches with multiple men hardened my resolve. I need absolute clarity, I said, voice low. No second-guessing or rationalizing. I want to see it if it happens. They nodded, accepting my choice. 10 minutes later, we parted ways, Miguel to prepare the equipment, Zoe heading back to our office to finalize some vantage calculations, and Lydia to Titan's building for continuing the official audit. She was keeping up appearances so Titan wouldn't suspect anything amiss on my end. Meanwhile, I found a text from Elena. My day is slammed. Might not be home till late again. Sorry. I stared at it, wondering if she was with Victor or one of the others right then. The numbness inside me grew. I'm sorry too, I thought grimly. The day slipped by in a haze. By late afternoon, Nathan confirmed that he and Zoe had set up a dedicated feed going to a secure server at our firm. It was a partial video feed from across the street. That evening, we all huddled around a monitor, adjusting the zoom. Horizon's windows filled the screen, tinted so strongly that any movement behind them was faint. But once Zoe toggled a filter, shapes became more defined. We could see desks, figures passing by. My heart pounded at the sight. We tested different vantage points. The cameras, perched from a nearby vacant office that Miguel had arranged, gave us a diagonal line of sight. We found Elena's approximate office zone. Her nameplate was hidden behind tinted glass, but based on the building layout, we zeroed in on the 20th floor's southwestern corner. The angles weren't perfect, and we mostly got a partial view. But it might be enough to confirm comings and goings. Throughout the next 2 days, we poured over hours of silent footage. Staring at tinted windows wasn't thrilling, but our objective was clear. The tension in my chest refused to release. My nights were restless. I'd jolt awake from nightmares imagining Elena in bed with someone else. Then I'd spend the morning with coffee in hand, scanning video like it was the last puzzle of my life. Finally, midweek, we caught a glimpse of something. Zoe paused the video. Look, that's Elena, right? She highlighted a figure in a black blazer stepping into what we assumed was her office. I leaned in. The woman's silhouette matched Elena's height and posture, hair pinned up in a loose bun. She set her handbag on the desk, turned on a lamp. Another figure arrived a minute later, a man in a gray suit. We couldn't see his face well, but his broad shoulders and confident stance were reminiscent of the man I'd seen through Titan's telescope. Our vantage was slightly angled, so we saw them from the side. My breath caught. They seemed to stand face to face, conversing. Then the man placed a hand on Elena's waist. Even through tinted glass, the gesture looked intimate. A spike of rage shot through me. I clenched my fists under the table, swallowing a surge of nausea. Lydia's hand covered mine gently. After a brief exchange, the man left. Elena walked to her desk, head bowed, as if lost in thought. She typed something on her computer, then paced the length of the office. The room's blinds were partially open, allowing us that painfully clear angle. Eventually, she disappeared from the frame, perhaps heading out to a meeting. Zoe exhaled. It's not conclusive evidence of anything physical, but it's definitely not normal coworker distance, right? My jaw tightened. No, it's not. That evening, we kept watch again, analyzing more footage. The camera's vantage also captured the corridor outside Elena's office whenever the door opened. We saw at least one other man enter after hours, but the angle was too poor to confirm who it was. We noted the timestamps, 7:32 p.m. and 7:58 p.m. He left roughly half an hour later. Each instance felt like another hammer blow against my chest. To intensify coverage, Miguel set up a second camera near the elevator banks on that same floor. bribing a maintenance worker to let him place it behind a service panel with a tiny slit. Its feed was grainy but gave us glimpses of who stepped off on the 20th floor. Nathan integrated that feed into our system, letting us cross-reference arrivals with Elena's appearances. 2 nights later, we caught clearer images of Thomas, one of the other names from Elena's emails, stepping off the elevator and heading straight to her office around 8 p.m. No one else was in the corridor. He didn't leave until nearly 9 p.m. By then, the building looked half deserted. Watching all of this was excruciating. My sanity clung by a thread. Grace occasionally reminded me to breathe, to blink, to step away from the monitor. But every time I tried, the rage, sadness, and disbelief coursed through me all over again. My wife had multiple men visiting her after hours, physically close. The lines were all there, connecting to a horrifying truth. Elena's betrayal wasn't a single mistake. It was systematic. Despite the heartbreak, I felt a twisted sense of validation. My rational mind wanted data, and now it was flooding in. This was real. My next step was how I'd respond. I recalled my meltdown at Titan's building, how powerless I felt. Now, ironically, I had power, knowledge, and the capacity to plan. By the end of that week, we had enough footage to confirm that 4 men, Victor, Thomas, a man I recognized from photos as Philip, and a 4th, presumably Daniel, visited Elena's office on separate nights. In some cases, they arrived for quick visits during lunch breaks. Other times, it was late. Each encounter had the same pattern: close physical contact, door shuts, uncertain length of time, then departure. She was juggling them on a schedule, like a manipulative web of workplace affairs. One evening, after we turned off the monitors, I slumped in my office chair, burying my head in my hands. Lydia hovered near. "James, you can't keep living on coffee and heartbreak," she said softly. "It's eating you alive." I peered up, tears I refused to shed burning my eyes. "I know, but I'm so angry," I confessed. "I feel like I don't even know who I married." She nodded sympathetically. "That's why you're doing this. So you can stop living with half-truths and see it clearly." I inhaled a shaky breath. "Tomorrow, I want to watch the entire day. I suspect there's a time they all show up together." Lydia's gaze sharpened. "That would be a lot for you to handle." My mouth set in a line. "I need to see it. If it's happening, I won't hide from it." Her shoulders sagged. She murmured, "We'll stand by you." As we locked up for the night, the tension in the office felt thick as tar. Each of us was reeling from the knowledge that Elena was playing a dangerous game at her workplace. But for me, the agony was personal and excruciating. Even so, I refused to give in to despair. "I will see this through," I vowed silently, my heart pounding in slow, methodical rage. The following Monday felt like the calm before a storm. Nathan, Zoe, and Miguel had a meticulous routine in place now. Cameras were fully operational, capturing angles on Elena's door and corridor. Every feed was downloaded daily, cross-referenced with timestamps. Sophie managed the digital side, logging any suspicious references in Elena's emails about meeting times. Meanwhile, I juggled Titan's audit with the others on my official team, pretending everything was normal. Inside, I was a mess. Anxious energy churned in my gut. My mind kept replaying the final puzzle piece I suspected. The group scene Elena's emails had hinted at. It was always scheduled under cryptic code words. I dreaded the possibility of seeing it, but if it existed, I needed that final confirmation to push me across the line from heartbreak to decisive action. That morning, I arrived at my firm's office before dawn to check the weekend footage. Zoe and Nathan joined, each wearing the kind of resigned expression one gets after a marathon of emotional stress. The first few hours of the feed were standard routine. Elena showing up around 8:30 a.m., grabbing coffee from a break room, diving into desk work. The same for lunchtime. A man arriving, them talking, door closes. But then, around Friday midday, we saw something unusual. A tall figure in a pinstripe suit showed up, followed by a shorter man with sandy hair. Seconds later, 2 more men approached. Their body language suggested they were all comfortable with each other. They walked in a loose group, glancing around like they didn't want to be seen. One opened Elena's door, and all 4 slipped inside. The corridor was empty. We had no direct camera angle inside that room. Only silhouettes moving behind tinted glass. My skin crawled. They're all in there. My wife was presumably on the other side of that door with them. My stomach clenched so violently I thought I might retch. Zoe spoke in a hushed tone. That's definitely Victor, Thomas, Philip, and Daniel. Matches everything we've seen. And it's midday on a Friday. She was free then, right? Sophie cross-checked Elena's digital calendar, which we'd pulled from the server. Yes, she blocked out team meeting from noon to 2. But that's obviously a lie. I stared at the monitor, breath ragged. For the next 90 minutes of the feed, the men remained inside Elena's office. The tinted windows only gave us partial shapes. Sometimes we saw shadows crossing the glass, sometimes a figure leaning on the desk. At one point, a form that looked like Elena's seemed to dance or move from one silhouette to another. My imagination ran wild with what might be happening. My hands trembled on the desk, tears of fury burning behind my eyes. Finally, around 1:45 p.m., the door opened. The 4 men filtered out, laughing among themselves, adjusting ties. One even seemed to pat the other's shoulder in a conspiratorial gesture. Elena followed them to the threshold, wearing a small smirk. Then they dispersed, each heading in a different direction. She lingered, glancing up and down the hallway, before stepping back inside. Her face was partially visible, and from that angle, I thought I caught a satisfied expression. I froze. Nathan let out a slow breath. James, I'm so sorry. I said nothing, only gazed at the freeze frame. 90 minutes. For men. My entire body felt hollowed out. The last vestige of denial cracked under the weight of evidence. She wasn't just unfaithful. She was orchestrating an ongoing, multi-part affair right there at Horizon. She was confident, comfortable, unashamed. A strange calm settled over me. The heartbreak and fury crystallized into a single thought. I will make them pay. I pictured them smirking as they walked away from my wife's office. I thought about how Elena had once gazed at me with love. Now she gave those men the same, or more. The betrayal burned like acid. I stood up, voice eerily steady. All right, that's enough. We have everything we need. Zoe hesitated. So what's next? Confrontation? Lawyers? My hands shook slightly as I pulled out my phone. I want a plan. A complete plan, down to the last detail. Elena is risking more than just her marriage. She's tangled up with these supervisors. This is workplace misconduct. Might even be blackmail. I want them all exposed. Grace, who'd arrived to watch the last part of the footage, nodded grimly. What do you have in mind? I closed my eyes for a moment, summoning every ounce of logic and strategic thinking that had guided me through countless audits. This time, my target was my own wife and her lovers. First, legal counsel, I murmured. I'll need a lawyer to draft divorce papers that hit like a freight train. But that's not the end. I want these men facing consequences. If they're using corporate funds, booking hotels, or engaging in unethical behavior, we can gather that evidence too. Nathan raised a brow. We do have some receipts from her emails. Might trace them back to expense reports. Possibly show the men were defrauding Horizon or using company accounts. I nodded. Yes, perfect. Let's cross-check the receipts with any business transactions in Horizon's system. If they used corporate cards for personal stuff, we can prove their wrongdoing. Sophie bit her lip. Are you sure you want to scorch the earth this way? Once you release this, there's no going back. My gaze flickered to the paused screen, for men leaving Elena's office. I'm sure, I said flatly. They collectively humiliated me, broke me. Elena spat on our vows. My voice wavered only slightly. I'm not letting them walk away unscathed. The room fell silent, each team member absorbing the gravity. My mind whirred with possible scenarios, serving divorce papers in the middle of one of their illicit meetings, sending an internal memo with video evidence to Horizon's upper management, even messaging their wives or families. The old James might have hesitated, but that man was gone, replaced by a version of me who'd stared betrayal in the face and refused to collapse. Grace was the first to speak. We'll need to proceed carefully. Legally, morally, this can blow up. But if you're set on your decision, we can map out each step. I pulled a blank notepad from the desk. Yes, let's do that. Step 1, contact a solid divorce attorney. Step 2, compile a master file of evidence. Videos, receipts, emails, timestamps, everything. Step 3, coordinate the bombshell so it lands at exactly the right moment. Zoe and Nathan nodded, jotting down tasks. Lydia offered a tight-lipped sigh. James, you're strong, but please remember to look after yourself too. Revenge can devour you. Her concern was genuine, but I was already fixated on the plan. I'll manage. I promise. The ache in my chest had transformed into a cold resolve. Thank you all for having my back. I know this is personal, but you're my family now. Zoe placed a comforting hand on my arm. We won't let you do this alone. Within the hour, we had a preliminary blueprint. How to finalize infiltration of any relevant financial details. How to choreograph the confrontation. If possible, we timed the divorce paper delivery for maximum impact. My heart pounded like a drum, but my mind felt laser-focused, the swirl of heartbreak replaced by an eerie clarity. Just as we wrapped, my phone buzzed. A text from Elena. Working late. Maybe I'll grab takeout. You want anything? The banality of her message stung. She was living a double life with chilling ease. I stared at the words, numb. Grace noticed my trembling hand. You okay? I set the phone aside. I'm ready, I said softly, meeting her gaze. No matter what she says or does now, I'm done playing the fool. They all nodded solemnly. Part 2 of my life had ended the moment I watched 4 men exit my wife's office. Now, I was stepping into uncharted territory, fueled by the darkest combination of heartbreak and fury I'd ever known. By the time I stepped into Wallace & Kern LLP, a small but reputed law firm in a modest downtown high-rise, my head was buzzing with the data my team had collected. Videos, emails, timelines, evidence of Elena's repeated betrayals. The morning sun glinted off the polished tile floor as I rode the elevator up to the 12th floor, clutching a black folder that contained everything I needed to ruin my wife's double life. Henry Wallace greeted me in the reception area. He was in his mid-50s, with gray at his temples and a patient, incisive gaze. I'd found him through a referral from a business associate who swore Henry was methodical and discreet. Exactly what I needed. Inside his office, the blinds were half-drawn, letting in a muted daylight. A potted plant in the corner cast a thin shadow across the carpet. Henry sat behind a heavy wooden desk, gesturing for me to take a seat in a dark leather chair. I perched on the edge, my nerves tightening like a coiled spring. Mr. Carter, he began gently. I understand you're here to file for divorce. I exhaled. Yes, and I need it handled in a particular way. He folded his hands. Go on. I slid the folder forward. My wife's name is Elena Carter. We've been married 8 years. She's involved in multiple affairs, for men in her office. We have video footage, email proof, receipts. She and her partners have used company resources for personal rendezvous, sometimes even scheduling group encounters. I want a divorce that leaves no wiggle room for her to deny fault. Henry's eyebrows rose, but he didn't look surprised or shocked. He'd likely seen worse in his career. Adultery is grounds for a straightforward no contest if you want. But it sounds like you're leaning towards something bigger. My jaw tightened. I'm not out to salvage anything. I want it served in a way that exposes her fully. This isn't just about dissolving the marriage quietly. I need her to realize there are consequences. Also, her company might need to see the truth. He studied me with a calm expression. You're looking to prove misconduct, not just to the court, but also to her employers. I nodded. Yes, and the men involved are her superiors. They've manipulated corporate finances to hide personal expenses. My team uncovered evidence. So part of this is about applying legal pressure at the right time. Henry leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen on his desk. We can structure the divorce petition to emphasize her adultery and potential fraud if any marital funds were misused. But you mentioned serving in a particular way. Care to elaborate? My heart thumped. I thought back to the hush in our conference room when Lydia, Grace, and I mapped out the steps. Deliver the divorce papers precisely when Elena is with one of her lovers. That shock factor would push her into making rash decisions, maybe even force her to quit. I want the papers served when she's physically with at least one of the men. Public enough that she can't wriggle free with lies, but not so public that it looks melodramatic. Possibly at her workplace. Are we able to do that? Henry pursed his lips. Legally, you can serve papers at her workplace, though it can be messy. But yes, we can hire a process server to deliver them in front of a witness. He paused, meeting my gaze. Are you sure? This route can be humiliating for both parties. There's no reversing the spectacle. I clenched my fists under the desk. I'm beyond caring about humiliation. She's the one who turned us into a spectacle. Henry nodded slowly. Understood. He opened a fresh document on his computer. Tell me about your marital assets. Home, savings, any shared property. I gave him the short version. A condo, joint bank accounts, no children, no major debts. He took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. Finally, he sighed and handed me a draft petition to review. We'll finalize the wording, attach the evidence if necessary. Are you comfortable naming each correspondent if we can identify them? The thought of publicly naming Victor, Thomas, Philip, and Daniel gave me a perverse satisfaction. Yes, I want them listed. We worked through the language carefully, ensuring the petition spelled out Elena's repeated marital misconduct. My eyes stung, reading the formal phrases that made our once loving relationship seem like a cold transaction. But I felt no inclination to sugarcoat anything. An hour later, I left the law firm with an unsettled swirl in my gut. The cruelty of it was real. She'd never see it coming. And yet, I tried to remind myself that this wasn't about petty vengeance alone. She was the one crossing professional lines and shattering our marriage. My mind drifted back to the day I saw her with Victor through that telescope. That single image had changed my world. On my way back to the office, I called Lydia. Her calm voice steadied me. How'd it go? She asked. Papers are in motion, I said. They'll be ready for delivery in a couple of days. He's using a process server he trusts. Timing is on us. Good. Grace and I have been digging into the men's financial records. We found matching expense accounts that look suspicious. Also, more tips from that friend of mine at Horizon's finance department. We'll talk in person. When I hung up, a wave of exhaustion washed over me. But I also felt a spark of grim determination. The moment for illusions was gone. I was drafting the end of a life I once cherished. Later that night, I gathered my team in the conference room at Carter & Associates. The overhead fluorescent light hummed softly, reflecting on the polished table. Nathan, Zoe, Sophie, Grace, and Lydia sat around me, tension visible in their postures. I told them the plan. We'd watch for a day Elena was with one of her lovers, likely Victor, since he was the ringleader, and have the process server appear. Then I'd call Elena, pushing her to make a choice. Face legal ruin or do the right thing. We'd also hint that if she didn't own up, I'd release the evidence to her entire company. Nathan fiddled with his pen, looking uncertain. You sure this won't blow back on us? If her company or the men come after you? Zoe answered before I could. They might, but we have enough to prove wrongdoing on their part. They can't easily retaliate. James's evidence is substantial. Sophie's soft gaze flicked to me. Just be careful. Anger can make people do dangerous things. I nodded, acknowledging her concern. I'll keep my guard up. We ended the meeting on that note, each person digesting their role. Lydia would coordinate with the lawyer on final details. Grace would handle any last-minute expansions to the evidence packet. Zoe and Nathan would watch Elena's schedule, letting me know the best window for the strike. Sophie promised to stay close by if I needed moral support. Walking out of the office that night, I thought about Elena's possible reactions. Would she break down and beg for forgiveness? Deny everything? Or lash out in rage? I realized I didn't actually care which it was. The hurt had calcified into a rigid resolve. She might be the mother of some alternate future life we once planned. Kids, a house, but that dream was dead. The woman I was dealing with now was a stranger to me. I grabbed dinner alone at a burger place that stayed open late, the lights glaring against the dark street. Chewing listlessly, I stared at my phone, half expecting Elena to text an apology or explanation. Nothing came. In a moment of irony, I realized she'd been quiet these last few days, perhaps suspecting something was off with me. But she couldn't possibly grasp the scale of what was coming. When I finally got home to the condo, I stood in the living room, letting the silence press against my eardrums. Her scent still clung to the couch pillows, a faint reminder of better times. For a second, sorrow stabbed me. Then I recalled her face as she welcomed other men into that same life. My sadness hardened into a vow. No more illusions. The legal gambit was set. Now I just had to wait for the moment to release it. 2 days later, just after lunch, Zoe's text lit up my phone. She's with Victor now. 14th floor lounge, heading to her office soon. My pulse kicked. I'd stayed near Titan's building as a cover story, but the real reason was to be close in case the window opened. I called Henry's office. The process server, Rita, was already on standby. Now, I said simply. After a terse confirmation, I rushed into the Titan development lobby, stepping out of the foot traffic and resting against a marble column. My heart hammered. Lydia, who'd accompanied me for moral support, reached out and squeezed my shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, James." I murmured a thanks, swallowing the lump in my throat. We watched the clock, each second stretching. Our plan was for Rita to intercept Elena and Victor when they returned to Elena's office. Meanwhile, I'd call Elena to ensure her phone rang at the precise moment of delivery, like a twisted stage play where every actor hit their cue. The minutes crawled. Then Zoe sent another message. "She's on the move with Victor, heading upstairs." My ears roared with adrenaline. I dialed Elena's number. It rang once, twice. My chest felt tight as I waited, imagining her with Victor in the hallway. Finally, her breathy hello came through. I envisioned her juggling her phone, maybe glancing sideways at him. I steadied my voice. "Elena, James here." A pause. "Oh, didn't expect you to call. I'm in the middle of something." I heard low murmurs in the background. I forced composure. "I just wanted to let you know something important. You see, Suddenly, a muffled commotion sounded on her end. Through the phone, I caught snippets. "Ma'am, are you Elena Carter? You've been served." "Wait, what?" "Take your hands off me." Then more jumbled voices. "James, what is this?" Elena snapped, her tone cracking. "Some woman just shoved papers at me." Victor, hold on." My free hand curled into a fist. "They're divorce papers. Read them carefully. I suggest you step away from your boyfriend to do so." She gasped. "You're insane. I'm at work. That's where you do your extracurricular activities, right?" I said, letting the bitterness seep in. "You and your supervisors. Don't pretend you haven't been lying." Silence, except for her rattled breathing. Victor's voice faintly asked, "Elena, what's going on?" She must have put the call on speaker or something because he sounded close. The thought made my teeth clench. I pressed on. "Check the documents. You'll see there's more than just a divorce. I'm citing your workplace misconduct, potential fraud with corporate funds, and naming your partners. Victor among them." Elena's voice wavered between fury and panic. "You can't. You have no right. I have every right." I countered, and plenty of proof. "If you or your buddies try to deny it, I'll send everything to Horizon's HR and legal department. Actually, I might do that regardless. Unless you'd prefer to resign quietly. Maybe file a sexual harassment claim. Tell them you were coerced. You do have choices, Elena." My words were calm, but inside, my heart slammed in my chest. She stammered something. Then Victor came on the line, voice edged with anger. "Carter, you'd better back off. This is harassment." I cut him off. "Harassment? Really? That's rich, coming from a manager sleeping with his subordinate on company property." He launched into a tirade. I caught phrases like unprofessional and "you'll regret this." But I was done. "Elena," I said firmly, ignoring him, "the ball's in your court. You can keep up the lies or face the truth. I'm done playing the fool. Read the paperwork and decide." Then I hung up, trembling all over. Lydia guided me to a bench in the corner, her eyes wide with worry. "Deep breaths, James." I tried, but the adrenaline soared. Through Titan's glass doors, I spotted a commotion across the street at Horizon's building. 2 or 3 bystanders peered curiously at Elena and Victor in the lobby. Rita, the process server, was calmly stepping away with a neutral expression. A security guard hovered uncertainly. The drama was public enough to ensure word would spread. Lydia's phone buzzed. She checked it. Zoe says Elena stormed off to her office, Victor tailing behind. They're both shouting. The staff there looked startled. She exhaled. We pulled it off. A hollow sense of triumph fluttered in my chest. I guess so. But the reality of what I'd just done was heavier than I'd imagined. My marriage wasn't just dying. It was going down in flames, along with Elena's illusions. We left the Titan building, crossing to our firm's nearby parking garage. On the way, I forced myself to keep my posture upright. I didn't want to look like a man undone by heartbreak, even though inside I felt a swirling mix of grief, anger, and a strange relief. I recalled how many nights I'd paced my living room, imagining how confrontation might unfold. Now it was real, and I felt numb. Back at Carter and Associates, I called Henry. He confirmed the server's success. "She refused to sign anything, but that's normal," he said. Service was completed the moment those documents touched her hand in front of a witness. Good, I replied. Thank you. Expect a call from her lawyers soon. He chuckled grimly. I won't be surprised if they call in the next hour. Hang tight, Mr. Carter. I sank into my office chair, eyes closing. Slowly, the tension in my muscles subsided. Lydia placed a coffee on my desk. Drink. You look wrecked. I feel wrecked, I admitted, sipping the hot liquid. It tasted bitter, but it grounded me. The hum of the air conditioning filled the silence. At least I wasn't alone. My mind flickered to Elena's face. Angry, cornered, humiliated. For a second, pity threatened to surface. Don't waver, I reminded myself. She'd created this nightmare. I was only unveiling it. Outside the windows, the afternoon sky turned a dull gray. Storm clouds drifted overhead, reflecting how I felt. Unsettled, ready to break at any moment. Yet this was the path I'd chosen. No turning back. My phone lay silent on the desk, but I knew more calls would come soon. Possibly Elena's or her men's lawyers, or even a furious message from Horizon's HR. I breathed deeply, preparing for the next battle. I caught sight of Sophie peeking around the door, her eyes tentative. Hey, you okay? I nodded slowly. As okay as I can be. She ventured closer. Well, if you need to talk or just decompress, I'm here. Her concern was genuine, reminding me that I had a support system I once took for granted. Thanks. I mustered a small smile. Right now, I just need some quiet. I'll update everyone once I hear more. Sophie squeezed my hand gently, then left. The echoes of the strike still reverberated in my head. Elena had the papers. The illusions were shattered in front of Victor, maybe half the office. Good. A darker part of me savored the fact that I'd orchestrated it all. You can't cheat on me in secret anymore, Elena. The world knows now. I stared at the ring on my finger. Slowly, deliberately, I slipped it off and placed it in a drawer. My voice came out a broken whisper. Enough. The next day was a whirlwind. By mid-morning, I'd received voicemails from 2 different lawyers claiming to represent Elena. Evidently, she was scrambling for legal counsel. Her second message dripped with furious accusations. She called me vindictive, petty, insane. Part of me hurt at her words, but mostly I felt a grim satisfaction. She was flailing, and I had the advantage of proof. Meanwhile, Lydia and Grace finished organizing the final evidence packages. We planned to distribute them to the relevant parties at Horizon, HR, the board of directors, and possibly upper management. The evidence included time-stamped video clips, expense reports, and emails naming each man who had joined Elena in her office escapades. We also had a separate version for the men's spouses, should they need or request it. That afternoon, we gathered in the main conference room. A hush settled. On the large TV screen in front of us, Nathan had queued up the incriminating videos. Zoe had prepared an email draft addressed to top Horizon executives. I stared at the subject line, evidence of misconduct, Elena Carter and supervisory staff. My pulse thudded. All set. Zoe asked quietly. I swallowed. Yes. Send it. She clicked, and in seconds, the files whisked away to the company's official inboxes. I exhaled, feeling like I'd launched a missile. Grace nodded. Now the supervisor's wives. She typed again, attaching a link to the same videos, but with a private note. We debated for hours whether to do this, but the men's betrayal was just as blatant, and some of them had families. The wives deserved to know. Another click. Another missile launched. A nauseous dread twisted my stomach. My moral compass flickered. But I recalled each conversation we'd uncovered. The brazen phone calls, the blatant use of corporate funds, the humiliating group trysts. This wasn't about petty revenge alone. I was ensuring accountability. If that meant turning their world upside down, so be it. Within an hour, the reaction started. My office phone lit up. Lydia answered carefully each time, deflecting or passing on only crucial calls. Horizon's HR manager left a terse voicemail, asking for a meeting to verify the authenticity of these recordings. Another manager emailed me, furious at the public smear. Grace calmly reminded me not to respond in anger. We'd let the facts speak for themselves. Then came a flurry of personal calls from unknown numbers. Some were wives in tears, demanding more information or lashing out in confusion. Lydia shielded me from the brunt, offering them the relevant links or disclaimers. I half listened, torn between guilt and justice. They don't deserve the heartbreak, but neither did I. By late afternoon, the tension soared. My phone pinged, a text from Elena. You had no right to do this. You're ruining lives. I hope you're happy. My chest tightened, but I typed back. I didn't ruin them. You all did. I'm just exposing what's already broken. A minute later, she replied with a chain of curses and ended with, "We'll see you in court." So be it. I retreated to my personal office, shutting the door behind me. Through the blinds, I could see the rest of my team going about their tasks, fielding calls. They were unwavering in their support. My chest ached with a curious mix of regret and grim relief. The hollow victory settled in. I'd wanted her to pay, and she was paying. Possibly losing her job, definitely losing our marriage, and dragging her lovers down with her. But none of this reversed the betrayal. Glancing at the ring in my desk drawer, I felt a pang. Our wedding day had been perfect weather. Elena wore a white gown that shimmered in the sunlight. We exchanged heartfelt vows. I used to believe in happily ever after, or at least a version of it anchored in loyalty. Now it's all ash, I thought. A knock on the door startled me. Nathan peeked in, looking somber. "Boss, you should see this." He led me to the break area, where Zoe had a laptop open on the table. She'd found an internal Horizon memo posted on a staff board. Victor Hayes, Thomas McMillan, Philip Rogers, and Daniel Clark are under immediate investigation. Elena Carter is on indefinite suspension pending further inquiry, it read. Some employees had posted comments below, furious or gossiping. The story was out. The meltdown was unstoppable. My reaction was complicated. Relief that justice was swift, sadness that it had to come to this. I murmured, "I guess the corporate wheels turn faster when there's undeniable proof." Zoe gave a tight smile. "They can't sweep it under the rug when the evidence is out in the open." Grace tapped her phone. "We just got an email from Horizon's legal department requesting an in-person meeting with you, James. They want direct confirmation of the timeline and the authenticity of the recordings." I nodded wearily. "I'll comply. Might as well bury them in paperwork they can't refute." The day blurred into a series of calls, emails, tense hallway discussions. By the time the sun dipped behind the city skyline, we'd scattered the seeds of Elena's exposure everywhere. I stared at the swirling lights outside my window, remembering how just weeks ago I'd been oblivious to her betrayal. Now we were on the edge of full-scale chaos. Lydia poked her head in once more around 6 p.m., laptop under her arm. One of the wives emailed us back. She's furious with her husband, but also wants to personally thank you for not letting him keep lying. It's heartbreak mixed with gratitude, apparently. She sighed. "You okay?" I rubbed the back of my neck. "I don't know. I guess I'm relieved that the truth is out. But I can't say I'm happy. People are hurting. Families are shattered." She frowned. "They're not your responsibility, James. You're not the one who made that mess." "Yeah," I whispered. "Just can't help feeling heavy about it." She nodded, stepping back to the door. "Try to get some rest. Maybe go home early." I nodded, though I knew going home meant sinking into the emptiness of the condo. Still, I promised her I'd leave soon. Once alone, I let out a long breath. The victory felt as if I'd climbed a mountain only to stand at the top with a storm raging around me. The sense of power from the plan's success mingled with the deep sorrow of a marriage broken beyond repair. I texted Henry to update him. He responded quickly, congratulating me on the tactical success. "Now we wait for their next move. Expect a harsh response from their attorneys," he wrote. That was fine. We were prepared. I shut down my computer and walked out into the chilly evening. The tension in my shoulders refused to loosen. My footsteps echoed on the sidewalk as I made my way to the parking lot. At a small diner on the corner, I stepped inside for a quick dinner. The hum of casual conversation, the clatter of plates, reminders that the rest of the world kept turning, oblivious to my personal war. As I stared at my untouched coffee, I remembered Elena's text. "I hope you're happy." Was I? Not exactly. More like determined, freed from illusions. A sense of finality lingered, but no real joy. The betrayal's bitter aftertaste lingered. Outside, a light rain started. I watched droplets pelt the pavement, forming shimmering puddles beneath street lamps. Fallout indeed, I thought. People scurrying by raised umbrellas, trying not to get soaked. But for me, there was no avoiding the storm. I was in it, and it was only just beginning. The first real threat came 3 days later, in the form of an anonymous letter slid under my office door. It was typed in all caps, riddled with profanity, warning me to stop ruining people's lives or you'll pay. No signature. I stared at it, heart clenching. Probably an angry Horizon employee or one of the men's relatives. We'd expected blowback, but seeing it spelled out felt unsettling. I showed Lydia, who frowned deeply. We should inform security downstairs. Maybe mention it to the police. I nodded, grim. Agreed. My father, always a voice of reason in my life, told me once that darkness is drawn to bright lights. I was shining a harsh spotlight on corruption. No wonder some people hissed from the shadows. Though I tried to keep a calm facade, each ring of my phone made me tense. I'd jump when a coworker approached unexpectedly. The knowledge that some faceless person might want to harm me was new and uncomfortable. Still, I refused to back down. One afternoon, as tension mounted, I decided to drive out to my father's place. He lived about an hour away in a small, cozy suburban house with a quiet yard. I needed his wisdom. The roads were half empty, the sky overcast again. By the time I arrived, the weight on my chest felt crushing. My dad greeted me at the door in a plaid shirt, concern etched on his lined face. "James, good to see you." He motioned me in. His living room smelled faintly of the lemon polish he always used on the old wooden furniture. We sat together on the couch. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I told him everything. About Elena's affairs, the videos, the divorce, the bombshell I dropped on Horizon. He listened without interruption, occasionally nodding. He wasn't surprised I was capable of something so strategic. Apparently, I inherited my mother's iron will. But the sadness in his eyes told me he ached for the heartbreak I'd endured. When I finished, he let out a slow breath. "Son, you always had a strong sense of justice. Right and wrong. I recall when you were a teenager, you marched into the principal's office with proof that another kid was cheating on tests. You wanted it fixed. This is bigger, of course, and more painful." I stared at my hands, remembering that old memory. "I can't live with lies," I murmured. "But I never wanted to be the man who tears everything apart. I just wanted a decent marriage." He patted my back. "I know. Life can be cruel. But you found out the truth and exposed it. Don't lose yourself in the anger. Keep your heart open enough to remember who you are." His words settled over me like a worn blanket, comforting but not erasing the ache. "Thanks, Dad. I'll try." We spent the evening talking about anything else, sports, a new restaurant in town, just enough distraction to keep me from drowning in my own thoughts. I stayed overnight in my old bedroom, the walls still painted with teenage posters. In the early morning, I got up to find him stirring scrambled eggs in the kitchen. As we ate, he said, "James, if you need a place to clear your head, this house is always open. Don't be a stranger." Tears pricked my eyes. "I appreciate that," I said. "I might take you up on it." In a moment of reflection, I realized it felt good to be away from the condo, away from the city. But I had responsibilities, my audit projects, my firm, and the unraveling divorce. When I returned to the office, Grace informed me that one of the supervisor's wives had shown up at our reception, demanding to see me. She left only after Lydia politely explained I was out of town. The woman had apparently been sobbing, furious, and insisted it was all a misunderstanding. My heart twisted. Misunderstanding? Hardly. But I understood her desperation. She was facing a broken marriage, too. That evening, I found a second hostile note under the door, cursing me for destroying good men's careers. The language reeked of misguided loyalty. I filed it away, deciding not to be rattled. If anything, it strengthened my resolve. These men caused their own downfall. Despite the threats and the swirling chaos, I sensed a slow relief seeping into my soul. The worst secrets were out. Elena and her lovers no longer hid behind closed doors. My father's words echoed in my mind. "Remember who you are." Perhaps a piece of me was still the man who believed in love and honest commitment, though battered and bruised now. One late afternoon, while reviewing some documents in my office, I got a call from a number labeled private. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. A trembling female voice came through. "James? It's me, Elena." My stomach flipped. I'd prepared for heated confrontation, but her tone sounded subdued, almost broken. "Yes." I kept my voice flat. She took a shaky breath. Just wanted you to know I've been asked to leave Horizon pending a full investigation. They say my activities conflict with corporate policy. I might be fired altogether. A strangled laugh. You got what you wanted, right? I paused. Part of me wanted to lash out, but hearing her voice so raw stirred conflicting emotions. Elena, I didn't force you to do anything. You made those choices, not me. Silence buzzed on the line. Then she whispered, they're all blaming me now. Victor, the others. Acting like I seduced them. They might file countersuits. Everything's out of control. I closed my eyes. I could imagine that pack of men turning on her once the heat turned up. That's unfortunate, I managed, though my sympathy was limited. But I'm not backing down from the divorce. She gave a bitter sigh. I know. I just can't believe it came to this. We had a good life, James. Did we? I asked quietly. Because from where I stand, you wrecked it. Her sniffle came through. You'll never forgive me, will you? I let the question linger. I don't know, I said at last. But forgiving and forgetting are different. And I won't forget. My voice turned firm. We have nothing more to discuss unless it's through our lawyers. Then I ended the call, my hands shaking. For a few minutes, I sat in silence, letting the hum of the overhead lights fill the room. She'd lost her job, faced lawsuits, possibly lost the men she risked everything for. My plan succeeded, yet I didn't feel victorious, just relieved to move forward without illusions. The days that followed were uneasy. I occasionally felt a prickle of fear leaving the office late, half expecting some enraged coworker to confront me in the parking lot. But I kept going, leaning on the team. They reminded me that I'd done the rational thing, even if it was painful. The aftershock would eventually settle. My father's invitation echoed in my mind. I decided to pack a small bag one Friday and drive to his place for a few days' breather. When I told Lydia, she approved wholeheartedly. Good idea. Clear your head. We'll hold down the fort. As I pulled out of the city, a sense of relief washed over me, the tall buildings shrinking behind me in the rearview mirror. The roads opened into quieter suburbs, green lawns, the slower pace of local shops. My heart felt a notch lighter with each passing mile. The storm still raged, but for now, I'd found shelter. And that had to be enough. I remember the day I decided to finally sell the condo. It had been about a week since I returned from my father's place, and a suffocating heaviness still lingered each time I set foot inside those walls. The living room where Elena once stretched out on the couch, the kitchen where we laughed over late-night snacks, it all felt diseased by betrayal. I kept telling myself that this was just a building, just furniture. But the memories clung like smoke. Late one afternoon, I stood in the middle of the living room, cardboard boxes piled around me. The light outside was turning gold, highlighting the shadows of half-packed items. My wedding photo had been face down on a side table for weeks, and I decided it was time to toss it. I tried not to dwell on her bright-eyed smile in the picture. She's just a person who hurt me, I told myself. I heard a gentle knock. The door creaked open to reveal Lydia, carrying a small bag of takeout. I figured you might not have time to cook, she said with a faint grin. Surviving on coffee and stress can't be healthy. I motioned her in. Thanks. This place is a mess. No worries. She carefully stepped around the boxes. We settled on the floor, leaning against a bare wall. She handed me a styrofoam container. The smell of warm noodles and vegetables filled the air, reminding me I hadn't eaten since morning. We ate quietly for a while, the hush broken only by the faint hum of traffic outside. Finally, Lydia spoke. So, the real estate agent you hired, did they say how soon you can list this place? I nodded. He's confident we'll get buyers quickly. It's a nice condo in a good area. I just need to finish packing the last of my stuff. Lydia glanced at the half-empty bookshelves, the random knickknacks I hadn't decided whether to keep or trash. You're sure this is what you want? No second-guessing. A weighty sigh escaped my chest. I'm sure. The memories here are too tangled up with everything that happened. I need a clean slate. She reached for a glass of water, her expression softening. I get it. Sometimes an empty canvas is the only way to move forward. We talked a bit more about the listing details, the likely price, and the showing scheduled for the following week. I felt a flicker of relief that soon, I wouldn't have to wake up to echoes of Elena in these rooms. Yet that relief was tinged with sadness for the future we once planned here. Weekend barbecues, kids running around. I had to push those visions away. An hour later, we wrapped up the packing for the night. Lydia rose, dusting off her jeans. Listen, You don't have to do this alone. Grace, Nathan, Zoe, and I can come by this weekend, help you haul stuff to storage. We'll bring music, make it less depressing. A reluctant smile touched my lips. You guys have your own lives. I don't want to drag you down. She waved me off. We're your friends, James. Friends show up. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a group text from Grace. Don't think about it too much. Count me in for packing day. I'll bring donuts. Right behind that, Nathan chimed in. I'll handle the heavy boxes, boss. Even Zoe shot an emoji of a flexing arm, adding, we got you. I felt a lump in my throat. These people had stood by me through the darkest weeks, never once complaining. Thanks, I whispered, touched by their devotion. When Lydia left, I stood alone in the condo, letting the silence settle. A wave of nostalgia hit me, mingled with the bitterness of betrayal. The walls were closing in, so I stepped outside onto the small balcony. City lights glittered below, headlights streaming through the streets like slow-motion stars. Shards of solace, I thought. Each small kindness from my friends was like a shard of hope, a piece of comfort that I could still be whole someday. The next morning, Grace arrived early, hair in a loose ponytail, wearing an old sweatshirt. She jokingly saluted when I opened the door. Behind her were Nathan and Zoe, lugging cardboard boxes. The bustle filled the condo with a strange kind of warmth. We turned on a local rock station, letting the music echo through the bare rooms. All right, where do you want these old records? Zoe asked, flipping through a box labeled Vinyl Collection. I hadn't touched those in months. My father gave them to me years ago, mostly classic rock and some jazz. They were too precious to toss, so I decided to store them. In that corner, I said, pointing. I'll keep them. Maybe I'll have room for a record player in my next place. Grace rummaged through the closet, emerging with a dusty board game. Monopoly? You never mentioned you liked this. I shrugged. It was Elena's favorite. Let's just donate it. No one questioned me further, sensing the tension behind that single name. We carried on, occasionally sharing light banter. Lydia popped by with donuts exactly as promised, plus an extra coffee for me. The sweet smell of sugar and caffeine mingled with dust from old belongings. It wasn't the cheeriest vibe in the world, but it beat the oppressive silence. We took a break around noon, collapsing on the living room floor with paper plates of takeout pizza. My team's chatter about random office gossip and silly memes brought a sense of normalcy. For a moment, I forgot the pain, focusing instead on the present. James, Nathan said gently, when you're out of here, have you decided where you'll stay? I swallowed a bite of pizza. I'm not 100% sure. The condo sale should close soon, so I might rent a short-term apartment until I find something permanent. I hesitated, then admitted, part of me wants a small house in the suburbs, something with a yard. But I'm not sure I can handle the commitment yet. Sophie had been quietly stacking boxes, but she spoke up now. House hunting can be overwhelming, especially with all you've been through. If you ever want a second opinion, I'd be happy to help. My sister's in real estate, remember? I looked at her, managing a half smile. I might take you up on that. Thanks. After lunch, the music picked up again, and we resumed packing. Despite the physical exhaustion, I felt lighter. Each box sealed was another piece of my old life I was ready to let go of. We joked, teased each other, and made the best of the situation. By the end of the day, the living room was down to bare essentials, and I could see the walls in a new light. Empty, neutral, no longer haunted by Elena's presence. As dusk settled, I insisted on thanking everyone. We ordered Chinese takeout for dinner, spreading out in the near-empty space. The conversation shifted to shows we watched, upcoming weekend plans, the fun side of daily life. Every so often, I'd catch Zoe or Grace shooting me a concerned look, but I'd just nod. I was handling it, or at least trying. When they finally left, I stood in the now mostly vacant condo, arms folded across my chest, exhaustion throbbing in my bones. The final sale wouldn't happen for another couple of weeks, but I already felt the burden lifting. With each piece of furniture gone, it was like letting fresh air into a stuffy room. And maybe, just maybe, letting hope Indiana. I trudged to the bedroom, bare except for a mattress on the floor, and lay down. My mind swirled with images of the day, my friends helping without complaint, the leftover boxes waiting for the next wave of packing, the last few trinkets belonging to Elena that I planned to throw out. My lips twitched in a small, weary grin. I wasn't healed by any stretch, but for the first time in ages, I could envision a future that wasn't eclipsed by heartbreak. Tomorrow, I thought, I'll finalize the paperwork for the sale. Then, this chapter will be one step closer to ending. And with that silent promise, I drifted into the deepest sleep I'd had in months. A few weeks later, the condo was sold. The final handshake with the buyers happened on a crisp Monday morning. A solemn exchange of pens and forms in a real estate office that smelled faintly of coffee and new carpet. I walked out feeling oddly weightless, as if I'd shed an old skin I never wanted to see again. My next move was a small, month-to-month rental downtown. I figured I'd stay there until I found something permanent. Yet the cramped space, with its off-white walls and constant traffic noise, left me restless. At night, I'd stare at the ceiling, wondering if I should aim for a more peaceful neighborhood. That's when Sophie stepped in. One afternoon, she tapped on my office door, her expression eager. "James, got a minute?" I glanced up from the spreadsheet I'd been studying for another client. "Sure, come on in." She entered, clasping a file folder to her chest. "So, my sister, remember I mentioned she's in real estate? Well, she found this older bungalow in a quiet suburb. It's a bit of a fixer-upper, but the price is decent. I think it might be what you're looking for." Curiosity sparked in my chest, mingled with caution. "A fixer-upper?" Sophie nodded, her eyes shining. "Yeah, it needs some TLC, maybe a new roof, updated kitchen. But it has a yard, a cozy porch, and big windows for natural light. It's charming." I took the file, flipping through photos. The bungalow had a quaint vibe. A small front yard with an old oak tree, a worn yet welcoming front porch, and a living room with large windows that let in plenty of sun. A pang of something like hope tugged at me. "It does look nice," I murmured. Sophie smiled, sliding into the chair opposite me. "I know you're wary of big changes, but you've talked about a yard, a quieter setting. This might be the fresh start you deserve." Her words echoed in my mind. "A fresh start. Could we see it in person?" I asked, trying not to sound too eager. "Of course. My sister can show it this weekend. I can tag along if you want a second opinion." 2 days later, we drove out to the suburban edge of the city. The sky was a wide expanse of soft blue, dotted with wispy clouds. The street was lined with tall trees, their leaves rustling in a mild breeze. Sophie's sister, Mia, greeted us at the bungalow's front gate. She was all smiles and professional polish, handing me a brochure with the property specs. As soon as I walked into the house, I felt an unexpected wave of calm. The hardwood floors creaked gently under my steps, the walls bore subtle scuff marks, and the paint was a little outdated. But there was a warmth, a sense that people had lived here happily once. The living room led to a cozy kitchen with a vintage feel, chipped tile, an old refrigerator, and a narrow window that overlooked a backyard big enough for a small garden. Mia rattled off details. "The plumbing is mostly updated, though we'll want an inspection to confirm. The roof might need replacing in the next few years. But it's structurally sound, and the neighborhood is safe, family-oriented. The previous owners moved to be closer to their grandkids, so they left in good spirits." Meanwhile, Sophie wandered around, occasionally pointing out little quirks. "You can put open shelves here, replace the sink," she said, tracing a finger across the worn countertop. "Or imagine a new coat of paint in the living room. Lighter shades would make it pop." Her enthusiasm was contagious, and I found myself picturing it. Not just a house, but a home. A place untainted by betrayal. My mind raced with possibilities. Maybe a small grill on the back deck, a quiet home office near a sunny window, no haunting corners with Elena's shadow. I realized my shoulders had relaxed for the first time in ages. We spent about an hour exploring every nook, from the little attic storage space to the uneven stepping stones in the backyard. Birds chirped from a nearby tree, as if reminding me that life went on beyond the city's frenetic pace. When we finally left, Mia handed me a stack of paperwork and asked me to think it over. I stood by my car, inhaling the fresh suburban air. "It's tempting," I admitted, glancing at Sophie. "I can see a future here." She gave me a gentle smile. "You deserve something that feels like yours, not overshadowed by old memories." We parted ways with Mia, and Sophie gave me a ride back to our office. During the drive, I found myself opening up. "You know, I never pictured myself alone in a house. When I was married, I thought that was the step Elena and I would take together. Now it's just me." Sophie reached for the radio dial, turning the volume down so we could talk quietly. Maybe it's time to reimagine what happiness looks like, instead of trying to salvage old plans. Her words hit me like a warm breeze. We made casual conversation for the rest of the drive, about the cost of renovations, favorite paint colors, how a small yard could be turned into a lovely garden. By the time I got back to my desk, I'd nearly decided this bungalow was the next step. The raw edges of my heartbreak were still there, but the thought of designing a home from scratch, on my own terms, gave me something positive to cling to. A week later, with Mia's guidance, I made an offer. My heart fluttered when the seller accepted it almost immediately. As I signed the preliminary paperwork, a mix of excitement and nerves swirled in my stomach. This was it, a chance to create my own sanctuary. My team celebrated with me the next day in our break room. Grace brought cupcakes frosted in pastel colors. Nathan jokingly offered to help me do manual labor, while Zoe snapped pictures to capture the moment. Lydia teased me about picking paint samples, and Sophie, standing to the side, flashed me an encouraging grin that warmed my chest. I thanked them all, my voice a bit shaky. You guys made me believe I could start over. I owe you. You owe us nothing, Lydia said firmly. We're just happy to see you, living again. In the following weeks, I closed the deal on the bungalow. The day the keys were handed over to me, I drove straight there and unlocked the door for the first time as the official owner. Sunlight streamed in, illuminating dust motes floating in the air. The floorboards creaked in a familiar greeting. Standing alone in that empty living room, I felt a surge of relief and hope. I could paint the walls any color I liked. I could tear down cabinets or plant a flower bed out back. There was no ghost of Elena telling me otherwise. That evening, Sophie stopped by with pizza and a six-pack of beer. We sat on the living room floor, no furniture yet, laughing about the blank slate of my new domain. We talked about tiling, about building shelves, about how the backyard might host a future barbecue. The conversation flowed like a gentle current, easing my lingering sorrow. At one point, she blushed, saying, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I'd love to help pick out curtains or something. It's fun seeing a place come to life. I found my voice catching. I'd like that, I managed softly. She nodded, her eyes bright. By the time she left, the moon was high, casting a silvery glow through the window. I locked the front door, walked through the empty halls, and felt a sense of belonging I hadn't experienced in ages. Home, I thought, leaning against a freshly painted wall. This is my new beginning. Shortly after moving into the bungalow, I finalized the divorce. It happened on a cold morning in a nearly empty courtroom. Elena wasn't there in person. Her lawyer showed up in her stead, but I felt the finality like a sharp dagger to the gut. I signed the papers, jaw tight, and just like that, our marriage was legally over. The judge barely looked up from his desk when he announced the dissolution, as if it was a trivial matter. But for me, a chapter of my life slammed shut. Outside, the wind nipped at my face. I stood on the courthouse steps, staring at the city bustling below. A swirl of relief and grief churned in my stomach. I'm free, I told myself, but the cost was steep. Over 8 years of memories distilled into legal jargon and a judge's brief nod. When I got back to the office, Sophie greeted me with a small hug, her gaze warm but worried. Are you okay? I forced a thin smile. It's done. That's all I can say right now. She nodded, not pressing me further. The next few days, I threw myself into house projects, painting walls pale gray, redoing the kitchen cabinets with a friend of Sophie's who specialized in woodworking. The steady hammering and smell of sawdust kept my mind occupied. My arms ached from manual labor, but it was a welcome kind of pain, tangible, unlike the emotional bruises from the past months. Just when I began to see the bungalow transforming, life blindsided me again. One late afternoon at work, my phone buzzed. A hospital number flashed on the screen. My chest tightened with dread. The voice on the other end informed me that my father, my anchor, had collapsed at home. He was in critical condition. I felt the blood drain from my face. I barely remember the drive to the hospital, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Grace had insisted on coming with me, saying I shouldn't face this alone. By the time we arrived, the doctor's grim expression told me what I didn't want to hear. My father had a massive heart attack. They tried everything, but he was gone. The world blurred. My lungs refused to work properly as I stumbled into the sterile hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, mocking me with their harsh brightness. Grace pressed a box of tissues into my hand, her own eyes shining with tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Through a fog, I signed hospital papers, answered questions about funeral arrangements. The staff spoke in quiet, practiced tones, like they'd done this 1,000 times. To me, it felt like a surreal dream. He can't be gone, I kept thinking. He was fine a few weeks ago. I remembered his comforting words, his gentle smile. My entire body trembled. Back at the bungalow that night, I sat alone in the half-finished living room. Tools and paint cans cluttered the space. My father never got to see this place. I'd meant to invite him once the renovations were done, show him how I was rebuilding my life. Now, I'd never get that chance. The pain was overwhelming, a fresh wound that dwarfed even my heartbreak over Elena. The next day, I began funeral preparations, making calls while trying not to break down. My father had a small circle of close friends, plus some extended family scattered across the country. They offered condolences, but the words blurred together. I felt numb, moving through tasks like a robot. My team stepped up in ways that left me speechless. Lydia handled some phone calls, gracefully deflecting inquiries. Nathan offered to drive me wherever I needed. Zoe quietly took over my client's schedule so I could focus on personal matters. Sophie, her eyes always gentle, stayed close, bringing hot meals when I forgot to eat. On the day of the funeral, a cool drizzle fell from a somber sky. The service was small, just as my father would have wanted. I stood in front of a modest gathering in the funeral home's chapel, struggling to find words to honor him. My voice cracked multiple times. I spoke about his unwavering support, his wisdom, about how he taught me the value of integrity. As I finished, tears slipped down my face. I heard sniffling among the small crowd, and Sophie's hand touched my shoulder in silent support. Afterwards, we drove to the cemetery. The rain had let up, but the clouds lingered, thick and gray. The casket looked too small, too plain for a man who'd meant so much to me. I wanted to scream at the sky, but I couldn't muster the strength. In my silence, I felt Sophie's arm linked through mine. She helped me stay upright as the final prayers were said. Later that evening, the bungalow felt impossibly quiet. I sat on the front porch, staring at the darkened street, numb with grief. The bare porch boards creaked beneath my weight. My father's last words replayed in my mind. "Don't lose yourself in the anger." He'd been talking about Elena's betrayal, but it felt relevant to everything now. "Don't lose yourself in the grief either," I told myself. I heard footsteps. Sophie emerged from inside. She'd insisted on tidying up while I sat there. "I put the dishes away," she said softly, coming to sit next to me. "You should get some rest, James." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Thank you for staying." Her eyes glimmered with compassion. "Of course. You've been strong for so long. Let us be strong for you now." We fell into a deep silence, the kind that's both comforting and painful. The porch light cast a dim circle around us, catching the gentle flicker of sorrow on her face. It reminded me that I wasn't the only one who missed my father. He'd made an impact on my friends too. A slight breeze rustled the branches of the oak tree in the yard, as though nature itself offered a quiet condolence. Grief mingled with an odd sense of closeness to Sophie. We didn't speak about it, but something about the shared tragedy, the dark times I'd been through, and her constant presence formed a new bond. I wasn't ready to label it. All I knew was that her quiet empathy meant I didn't have to face the shadows of closure alone. And for that, I was immeasurably grateful. The weeks after my father's funeral passed in a slow blur. I threw myself into work at Carter and Associates, partly to distract from the grief, partly because the firm was growing. New clients came in, some impressed by the thoroughness of our audits, others referred by old connections. My office became a hive of activity, deadlines, client meetings, late-night strategy sessions. It helped muffle the ache in my chest. Yet beneath the busy routine, a subtle shift was happening. Sophie and I found ourselves sharing more quiet moments. Lunch breaks discussing paint swatches for the bungalow, occasional text exchanges about random daily things, or just short walks to a nearby cafe when we needed fresh air. Neither of us spoke about the deeper significance. Maybe we were both cautious, or maybe we just wanted to let things unfold at their own pace. One chilly evening, we wrapped up a major audit project for a local medical supplier. We decided to celebrate with the rest of the team in a small Italian restaurant down the street. The cozy interior smelled of garlic and fresh pasta. We snagged a round booth in the corner, laughter, and gentle music filling the air. To Carter and Associates, Nathan declared, lifting a wine glass. We all toasted. Lydia and Grace teased me for burying myself in spreadsheets yet again. Zoe cracked a joke about me needing to get out more. I chuckled, warmth stirring in my chest. It felt good, like a normal, content moment in the midst of life's storms. At some point, the conversation turned light and scattered. Lydia spoke about an upcoming half-marathon. Zoe mentioned a new coding class she was eyeing. Grace teased Nathan about a budding romance with someone from our building. Meanwhile, I caught Sophie's eye. She offered a private smile, and I felt a flicker of something strong, something I tried to ignore since my father's passing. After dinner, we all stepped onto the sidewalk. The city lights shimmered against a cold sky. One by one, the team peeled off, heading home or to parked cars. Sophie lived not too far from me, so we ended up walking the same direction, shoulders brushing occasionally. Want to grab a coffee before calling it a night? I asked spontaneously. My heart pounded a little too hard, like I was a teenager asking someone on a date. She shrugged, smiling. Sure, why not? We slipped into a small, softly lit cafe that was about to close. The barista recognized us as last-minute customers, but still offered a tired grin. We ordered 2 cappuccinos, picking a corner table by the window. A faint lamp overhead cast a warm glow on Sophie's face. At first, we chatted about routine things, work projects, my half-renovated kitchen. Then a lull hit. She tapped her spoon against the rim of her mug. James, can I ask something personal? My pulse jumped. Yeah, go ahead. She hesitated, eyes on the swirl of foam in her cup. You've gone through so much, Elena's betrayal, the divorce, losing your father. Do you ever feel like you're drowning under it all? The question cut deeper than I expected. I inhaled sharply, then released the tension in my chest. Sometimes, I admitted, but I'm trying to find my footing. With the bungalow, the firm, I don't want to be defined by the pain. She nodded. It just impresses me, how you keep going. I'm sure you have dark days, but you still show up for everyone else. A small, sad smile curved my lips. I'm trying to learn how to show up for myself too. My father would have wanted that. Silence settled, but it wasn't awkward. It felt charged, like a bridge we both felt drawn to cross. Sophie looked up, her eyes meeting mine. I'm not looking to push anything, she whispered. But sometimes I wonder if we've grown closer than just coworkers or friends. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain she could hear it. I cleared my throat. I've wondered the same. The words felt both terrifying and liberating. My mind flashed back to the countless hours she'd been at my side, offering comfort, laughter, or a silent presence when I couldn't speak. The slow-motion style of our interactions made sense now. We'd been circling this moment for a while. She reached across the table. Gently, our fingers brushed. Warmth coursed up my arm. It wasn't a grand, sweeping gesture, no dramatic music playing in the background, but it felt monumental. A flicker of light in a world I once thought permanently dark. It's scary, I confessed, voice trembling slightly. I'm still raw from everything. Sophie's expression softened. Me too, in my own way. But we can take it one step at a time. No rush. Nodding, I squeezed her hand. The cafe lights seemed to glow brighter, or maybe it was just the rush of relief coursing through me. In that moment, I felt something new blooming inside. A quiet hope, a gentle flutter that maybe, just maybe, I could open my heart again. We left the cafe hand in hand, hearts pounding. Outside, the wind nipped at our cheeks, carrying the scent of winter approaching. We didn't talk much as we walked. Sometimes words aren't necessary when something so simple, like holding someone's hand, speaks volumes. Eventually, we reached her car. She paused, turning to face me. I caught a hint of nervousness in her eyes, a reflection of my own uncertainty. Then, as though guided by an invisible thread, we leaned in. Our lips brushed in a tentative kiss, soft, hesitant, yet brimming with unspoken promises. It lasted only a moment before we pulled back, breath mingling in the cold night air. A slight laugh escaped her, almost shy. That was nice, she murmured. I nodded, cheeks warm. Yeah, I managed, my voice shaky in the best way possible. She slid into her car, and I stood there in the dim glow of the street lamp, heart drumming a wild beat. As she drove away, I realized my entire body felt lighter, as if a weight I'd been carrying for far too long had lifted just enough to remind me what life could be like without constant pain. Walking home, I reflected on how far I'd come, from discovering Elena's betrayal to orchestrating my own revenge, from drowning in sorrow to rebuilding a life, from grief over losing my father to a cautious spark of love with Sophie. It wasn't a neat story, no perfect beginnings or endings. But in that single tender moment tonight, I saw a flicker of light, a new possibility that maybe I wasn't as broken as I'd believed. I approached my bungalow, the porch light beckoning me through the darkness. Stepping inside, I breathed in the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings. I placed a hand on the living room wall, recalling the first day I got the keys. Now, I could imagine someone else's shoes by the door, the sound of shared laughter echoing off these walls. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly alive. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, but tonight was enough. I switched off the lights, letting the hush of the bungalow envelop me. A slow, contented exhale escaped my lungs. It's not about forgetting the pain, just embracing the chance for something better. I never thought I'd see Elena standing on my new porch. It was a Sunday afternoon, the sky a bright, cloudless blue. Sophie and I had been inside, painting the last corner of the dining room a warm cream color. Music hummed quietly from my phone. Everything felt peaceful, as though the harsh chapters of my life were finally behind me. Then came the knock, sharp and unexpected. Sophie and I exchanged puzzled looks. We weren't expecting visitors. She set down her paintbrush, and I headed for the door. The moment I opened it, my heart lurched painfully. Elena stood there, hair windblown, eyes rimmed with tension. I froze, paint roller in one hand, half-dried splatters of cream flecking my forearms. She swallowed hard. "James, can we talk?" For a second, I forgot how to breathe. The memory of everything she did, the affairs, the humiliations, the divorce, crashed over me. My gut clenched. In the living room behind me, Sophie's footsteps approached, then halted. I sensed her presence, just out of Elena's sight. I forced composure. "I'm not sure we have anything left to say." Elena's gaze flicked past me, scanning the half-finished interior. Her lips trembled slightly. I've been thinking about you. About us." Anger and an old flicker of sorrow rose in tandem. "That was your choice to destroy," I said quietly. "Why show up now?" Her eyes dropped. "Because I realize, maybe too late, that I made the biggest mistake of my life. I need you to hear me out." I hesitated. Every nerve in me screamed to slam the door, but a quieter voice reminded me that unresolved ghosts have a way of haunting forever. Slowly, I nodded. 5 minutes. I stepped aside so she could enter the foyer. Sophie, reading the tension, walked up behind me. There was a moment of taut silence when Elena realized we weren't alone. Sophie's face remained calm but alert, her eyes flicking to me as though silently asking, "Are you okay?" Elena's voice was tight as she said, "I'm sorry if I'm intruding." I ushered Sophie into the living room with a quick murmur. "I'll handle this. Wait there, please." She gave me a long look, concern mixed with quiet understanding, then disappeared down the hallway. When we were alone, Elena surveyed the small entryway, the coat hooks, the faint smell of paint. "This is nice," she said awkwardly. I didn't respond. Instead, I led her to the dining area where the paint cans and drop cloths lay scattered. The half-painted wall glistened in the light. I kept my distance, crossing my arms to steady myself. "You have 5 minutes. Go." She glanced at the empty chairs, then back at me. "James, I know I can't undo what happened, but I've spent the last few months realizing how lost I am without you. I was fired from Horizon. The men I got involved with turned on me. My life is a wreck." She swallowed. "I understand it's my fault, but I want you to know I'm sorry. Truly sorry." I studied her face, noticing the lines of stress around her eyes. In the old days, I'd have felt pity or a surge of protective instinct. Now, my sympathy was dulled by the memory of her group affairs and the heartbreak she left me in. "You're apologizing because your life fell apart? Or because you actually regret hurting me?" She flinched. "Both. I regret everything." Her voice caught. "I don't expect you to welcome me back with open arms, but I had to see you in person. I've tried calling, texting." I nodded grimly. "I blocked your number." Pain flickered in her eyes. "Right. Look, I accept that you moved on. I just need a chance to explain." The old bitterness in me stirred. "You destroyed my trust. You took our marriage and turned it into a public spectacle. My father died, never seeing me out of that misery. You had multiple men. I forced myself to stop, inhaling to keep calm. What's left to explain? She pressed her lips together, tears threatening. Everything I did was out of a twisted need for validation. I convinced myself I had to climb the corporate ladder at any cost. It became an addiction, attention, power, that sense of being wanted. I was stupid, blind, selfish. She shook her head. And now I'm alone, facing the consequences. My chest tightened. There had been a time I would have held her, told her we'd find a way through any problem. But that James was gone. I'm sorry for your pain, I managed, voice steady. But you brought it on yourself. Elena's tears began to fall. She looked around, as if searching for some remnant of the life we once shared. But this bungalow had none of it. No memories or photos tying me to her. My new start was curated to exclude her ghost. Finally, she whispered, I understand if you never want to see me again. But please, let me speak to you about that day you saw me flipping off the phone. A wave of fury slammed me. I'd replayed that image of her obscene gesture so many times in my mind. What about it? Her breath shuddered. It wasn't directed at you. I'd convinced Victor the First hated you, that you were controlling. I did that gesture for his benefit, to keep up the facade I'd created, so he wouldn't suspect how guilty I felt. A harsh laugh escaped my throat. So you were more worried about your performance for him than respecting your husband? Great. She closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. It's humiliating to admit. But yes, I was trying to appear cold to you, because if I seemed conflicted, I risked losing the promotion or whatever illusions I had about success. And I told myself it was just an act. I was a fool. Silence pressed in. Through the partially open window, I heard a neighbor's dog barking faintly. The tension was suffocating. At last I sighed. Elena, I appreciate the explanation, but it doesn't erase what you did. You made a mockery of my love, of our vows. She nodded, eyes brimming. I know. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to see me, face to face, and hear I'm sorry. Behind us, footsteps approached. Sophie stood in the doorway, face composed but resolute. James, she said softly, maybe we should wrap up. You look. She paused, searching my eyes for permission to intervene. I felt a surge of gratitude for Sophie. In that moment, it was painfully clear who truly cared for me now. Elena glanced at Sophie, realization dawning that a new presence filled the void she left. Elena's shoulders sagged. She nodded slowly, tears still clinging to her lashes. I'll go. She rummaged in her purse, pulling out a small envelope. Here, my new contact info. If you ever want to talk. I didn't move to take it, so she left it on a paint can near the door. With one last glance around, she turned and walked out. Sophie exhaled, stepping closer. You okay? My heart pounded. Emotions warred inside me. Anger, pity, a faint sorrow. I will be. I set aside the paint roller with trembling hands. She wants forgiveness, or at least to be heard. But I'm not sure I have anything left to give her. Sophie gently touched my arm. It's your choice. Don't rush. I nodded, chest tight. Watching Elena leave my new home felt surreal, like a ghost stepping out of a dream. The unexpected shadow of my past had arrived and departed in the span of minutes. But the aftershocks remained, swirling in my mind. Together, Sophie and I stood in the quiet entryway, the sense of intrusion lingering like a cold draft. I felt the old heartbreak scratching at my resolve, reminding me that even with new beginnings, the past can still find a way to show up uninvited. Word of Elena's visit spread quickly among our tight-knit group, though I kept details minimal. Lydia shot me a worried text asking if I was all right. Grace attempted some humor. Got your Ghostbuster gear yet? But I knew she was genuinely concerned. Nathan and Zoe offered to be around if I needed help with anything. Despite the swirl of support, I found myself restless in the days following Elena's sudden appearance. She'd left that envelope with her contact info behind. I avoided looking at it, shoving it into a kitchen drawer. My head teemed with questions, replaying her words. Was her regret genuine or driven by desperation? One evening, I couldn't sleep. Sophie had gone home, so the bungalow felt large and echoing. Eventually, I paced to the kitchen, flipping on a single overhead light. Before I knew it, I was pulling out that envelope, heart pounding. Inside was a handwritten note detailing her new address, a short apology, and a line. I want to tell you everything. Please give me a chance. Exhaling, I grabbed my phone, hovering over her number for a solid minute. I nearly tapped delete, but ended up pressing the call button instead. My pulse hammered as it rang. James. Her voice, uncertain and small. I cleared my throat. It's late, but I saw your note. She hesitated. I'm glad you called. I thank you. Does this mean you'll hear me out? I paused, glancing at the flickering light overhead. Yeah. Where are you? We arranged to meet at a neutral spot, a public coffee shop, bright and safe. I wasn't about to invite her back into my personal space. The next day, after work, I drove to a downtown cafe. The sun dipped low on the horizon, bathing the streets in a hazy gold. My chest tightened with a swirl of dread and curiosity. Why am I doing this? I wondered. Possibly for closure, or to quell the nagging questions about the middle finger gesture and her manipulative office affairs. I walked inside. The cafe smelled of roasted beans and sweet pastries. Elena was already there, huddled at a corner table, nursing a cappuccino. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, hair tied back. When she spotted me, she offered a tentative smile. I nodded, taking a seat across from her. A prickle of tension filled the space. The last time we'd had coffee together was months before her betrayal came to light, back when I believed we were a normal couple. She began softly. Thanks for meeting me. I folded my arms, keeping my tone calm. You said you wanted to explain everything. Go ahead. Her eyes glimmered with sadness. I know you have every reason to hate me, but let me start from the beginning. After the first time I strayed, I panicked. I knew it was wrong, but I rationalized it by telling myself I was doing it for the promotion. Then it spiraled. The men caught on to each other's presence, and I got stuck in a web of secrets. I inhaled, biting back the urge to snap. A web you built. She nodded miserably. Yes. I was so consumed by ambition that I couldn't see how I was tearing us apart. That day you saw me flipping off the phone. It wasn't aimed at you personally. I'd convinced Victor that you were controlling and cold. When you called, he must have seen your name on the screen, so I acted flippant to prove to him that I didn't care about you. It was a twisted performance. Anger flared in my gut. And you never thought about how that might crush me if I saw it? Or heard you speaking so casually with him while you told me you loved me? Tears gathered in her eyes. I was delusional. I never thought you'd find out. Stupid, I know. She swallowed hard. Every time you called, I felt guilty, but I also felt trapped. The more they threatened to expose me, the deeper I sank. I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of me with the memory of the cunning person orchestrating affairs behind my back. They threatened you? She nodded. Some of them used the possibility of exposing me to get more favors. I was manipulated, yes, but I was also complicit. I'm not trying to paint myself as a victim. I just want you to know how it got so out of control. My chest tightened. A swirl of conflicting emotions churned. Pity, anger, a faint sorrow. So now, you're jobless, your reputation's tarnished, and those men turned on you after they got exposed. You're left with nothing, and you come to me. Her shoulders slumped. I know how it looks, but I'm not here just because I'm desperate. I truly loved you once, James. Even amid my stupidity, I never wanted to lose you. But I did. I shook my head. You had a funny way of showing love, sleeping with multiple men, ignoring my calls, humiliating me. A tear slid down her cheek. I hate myself for it, and I know I can't fix it. But can you at least believe that I'm sorry? That the gesture you saw was a mask I wore for them, not a direct screw you at you personally? I studied her trembling hands, the dark circles under her eyes. Maybe she was being sincere, or maybe she was simply alone and needed me to assuage her guilt. Hard to tell. I believe you regret it, I said finally. But regret won't undo the damage. She sniffled, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I'm not asking for a second chance. I know you've moved on. I see that new woman in your life. At the mention of Sophie, my heart twisted with protectiveness. Yes, I have someone who actually respects me. Don't drag her into this. Elena nodded quickly. I wouldn't dream of it. She paused, voice trembling. I guess all I really want is your forgiveness, or at least your understanding that I'm not the monster you might think. A weight pressed in my chest. I recalled the nights I spent raging, imagining her as the villain who ruined me. But maybe she was just weak, misguided, and morally adrift. I can't promise forgiveness right this second, I said. But I can acknowledge you messed up in 1,000 ways. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what you needed, to own your mistakes. Her eyes welled again. That's more than I deserve, I know. But thank you. We sat in strained silence. Around us, the cafe buzzed with normalcy, people chatting, espresso machines whirring. I felt like an intruder in my own life. Finally, I cleared my throat. I have to go. She lowered her gaze. Yeah, sure. She looked up once more, voice hushed. Goodbye, James. I hope you find happiness. I rose, leaving a few bills on the table for the coffees. Without another word, I walked out. The chilly air outside slapped me awake. My entire body trembled, not from cold, but from the emotional tempest inside. I wasn't sure if meeting her helped or reopened wounds. But at least the confession was out. As I drove home, a strange sense of clarity emerged through the haze. Elena's actions were vile, but she wasn't an all-powerful demon. She was flawed, broken, paying the price. For a moment, my grip on the steering wheel eased. A corner of my heart felt lighter, as if hearing her side allowed me to inch closer to letting go of the resentment coiled inside me. Back at the bungalow, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a smoky purple. I let myself in, flicking on the living room lamp. Silence filled the freshly painted walls. Sometimes I still expected to see my father's knowing smile or catch a glimpse of the old me, naive and trusting. But life had changed. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. All good? You were gone longer than expected. I thumbed a quick reply. Met Elena. It's complicated. I'm okay. Talk soon. As I tapped send, I wondered if I truly was okay. The conversation with Elena replayed in my head, each word chipping away at the foundation of anger I'd built. Slowly, I realized that all this time, I'd clung to my fury like armor. Now that armor had cracks, letting in a painful empathy I wasn't sure I wanted. The next day, I poured my focus into work, meeting clients and reviewing audits. By mid-afternoon, my concentration fizzled. I closed my laptop, deciding to take a walk. The city sidewalks bustled with people finishing errands, ducking into shops. My feet led me aimlessly until I found myself near a small park. Trees swayed gently, and the crisp air carried a hint of pine. I sank onto a bench, letting the swirl of thoughts catch up. The echo of Elena's apology mingled with memories of her betrayal. It was like staring at a shattered mirror, each piece reflecting a different angle, each as real as the other. My phone rang. Sophie's name lit the screen. Hey, I answered softly. You sound distracted, she said, concern evident. Want to meet for coffee? I told her where I was, and she arrived within half an hour, wearing a light jacket and a worried look. She sat beside me, handing me a paper cup of hot chocolate. This felt more comforting than coffee, she said with a small smile. I took a sip, warmth spreading through me. We sat in companionable silence for a moment, the distant hum of city life reaching us from across the street. Finally, she asked, So Elena? I nodded, exhaling. We had a talk last night. She confessed everything, explained the finger gesture, said she regrets it all. It's messing with my head. Sophie's expression held compassion. Because you feel sorry for her? Or because you're wrestling with the idea of forgiving her? I shrugged, the question unraveling the knot in my chest. Both, maybe. I spent so long hating her, blaming her for everything. And she earned that hatred. But now, seeing her so broken, it's hard not to pity her. I stared at the cup in my hands. And a part of me wonders if letting go of my anger is the only way I can fully move on. She placed a gentle hand on my forearm. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or letting her back in. It can just be freeing yourself from the poison of resentment. I glanced at her, gratitude washing over me. Sophie had a knack for putting into words what I struggled to articulate. She's asked for forgiveness. She's basically admitted she knows she messed up everything. Sophie nodded. She can ask, but it's your decision. Maybe the question is, do you want to carry anger toward her for the rest of your life? Or do you want peace? My throat tightened. Peace sounded so alluring. But I can't pretend we can be friends or that I'll ever forget what she did. Sophie squeezed my arm. That's okay. Forgiveness can simply mean you're done being chained to the pain. A wave of emotion crested in me. The memory of my father's funeral, the heartbreak of the divorce, the sense of betrayal. It all blended with a growing desire for real closure. I swallowed hard. I think you're right. Maybe it's time to lay this burden down. She gave me a soft smile. I support whatever choice you make. I studied her face, the warmth in her eyes. She'd been my anchor, quietly guiding me to face truths I kept burying. Thank you, Sophie, for being here. She leaned her head against my shoulder. We watched a pair of children chase each other across the grass. A father cheered them on, the sight tugging at my heart. The notion of fatherhood had once been a dream with Elena. Now it felt like a distant possibility, maybe a future with someone I trusted. That night, I tossed and turned, replaying Sophie's words, "Forgiveness can free you." The next morning, steeling myself, I picked up my phone and texted Elena, "Meet me at the cafe. One last time." She responded quickly, "I'll be there." We met in the late afternoon. The same cafe as before, the same corner booth. This time, I arrived first. I sat sipping water, heart pounding but determined to keep my composure. Elena walked in, looking uneasy but more composed than last time. She settled across from me. "James, hi." I cut straight to it. "I've decided something. I want to let go of the anger. I won't forget, but I can't keep hating you. It's draining." Her eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and relief flickering. "You mean you forgive me?" I pressed my palms together, choosing my words carefully. "I forgive you for my own peace, not for yours. That doesn't mean I want you back, or that everything's fine. We're still done as a couple. I'm with someone else now, and I'm happy, but I'm choosing to release the bitterness." Her eyes misted. "That's more kindness than I ever expected." I swallowed, pushing down a surge of emotion. "I'm not doing this to help you. I'm doing it so I can finally breathe without your betrayal looming. You asked for my understanding, so here it is. I understand you messed up, you were lost. I hope you find a path that doesn't destroy you further." She let out a shaky breath, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Thank you. I know I can't make amends for the damage I caused, but I appreciate this." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Outside the window, cars crawled by, and people hurried along the sidewalk, oblivious to our drama. Finally, I cleared my throat. "I think that's all we need to say. I wish you well, Elena. But this door between us is closed." She wiped her tears, a sad smile forming. "Understood." We stood. She reached out as if to hug me, but I stepped back politely, giving a brief, cordial nod. Her face registered hurt, but she didn't push it. Then, with a trembling sigh, she turned and left. The sensation of relief, subtle yet profound, swept over me. I inhaled deeply, inhaling the coffee-scented air as though it were the first breath of my new life. The bitterness I'd clung to for so long felt lighter, like a distant echo. Outside, the late afternoon sun glinted against building windows. I walked with my head held high, phone in hand, already typing a message to Sophie. "It's done. I'm okay." After that day, it felt like an invisible line was drawn. Elena was firmly in my past, and I was free to live unburdened by old resentments. I couldn't change what happened, but I could control how I moved forward. Yet there remained one last piece of unfinished business. The condo share that Elena still legally owned, a fraction of property rights from our old place. The settlement had included a provision for me to pay her out or sign it over, but I'd never completed the transfer. I'd sold that condo months ago, but the final share of profit lingered in an escrow account. My lawyer, Henry, reminded me in a crisp email, "We need to finalize this matter." I decided to handle it in person. Something in me wanted a symbolic closure, handing her the check, ensuring we parted ways with no further entanglements. So I texted her again, letting her know, "Meet at Carter and Associates tomorrow. We'll settle the condo share." The next morning, the entire team was in the office. Lydia, Grace, Nathan, Zoe, and Sophie. They knew Elena was coming, and a tense hush filled the air. Our open-concept workspace buzzed with quiet productivity, but I felt everyone's eyes darting to the entrance. At 10 sharp, Elena arrived, shoulders hunched as if bracing against a storm. She wore a simple black coat, hair pinned back. She paused by the reception desk, uncertain. Lydia approached, face neutral but polite. "James is expecting you. This way." The two of them crossed the open office, passing by my team's curious gazes. I stood near my desk, arms crossed. Sophie hovered a few steps away, her presence a steady comfort. Elena stopped in front of me. "Good morning." "Morning," I replied, voice clipped. "Let's do this in the conference room." We walked in, the glass walls giving a sense of openness. My reflection stared back at me from the polished table, older, more worn, but resolute. Elena fidgeted with her coat sleeves. I placed a folder on the table. Inside was the final accounting from the condo sale, the check for her share. Everything's itemized, I said, sliding it toward her. Once you sign these papers, you'll have the funds, and we have no further ties. She glanced through the documents, eyes flicking. A small, rueful smile crossed her lips. It's surreal, huh? We once dreamed about that condo being our stepping stone to a family home. I forced down a pang of memory. A lot has changed. She nodded, then took the pen I offered. With a few strokes, she signed away any claim on my future. The scratch of pen on paper sounded final. Lifting her gaze, she gave a shaky exhale. So this is it. The absolute end of us. I stiffened, recalling the promise I'd made to myself. We ended months ago, Elena. This is just the final stand, closing out any shared ties. She pressed her lips together. I see. Carefully, she tucked the check into her coat pocket. Thank you for being fair, at least. I shrugged. I'm not out to destroy you financially. I just want you out of my life. A flash of hurt crossed her face, but she didn't argue. Outside the glass walls, I noticed my team discreetly watching, ensuring I wasn't cornered. Their loyalty sent a surge of warmth through me. Suddenly, the door opened, and Sophie entered. She'd never have barged in uninvited unless she felt it necessary. Elena turned, eyes widening at Sophie's calm presence. Sophie's voice was steady. James, is everything okay? I nodded. We're done here. I was about to walk her out. Elena's gaze flicked between us. I suppose you're the new love in his life, she said softly. I saw you that day at his house. Sophie met Elena's stare without flinching. Yes, I am, she said gently, no hostility in her tone. A flicker of envy or regret passed over Elena's features. Take care of him. He's worth protecting. Sophie simply nodded. I know. For a moment, all three of us stood in a suspended silence. Then Elena cleared her throat. I'll go. I have a flight to catch later. Moving to another state to start over. My brows rose slightly. Really? She shrugged, a sad smile. Fresh places, fewer reminders. I managed a nod of empathy. Good luck. At that, Elena squared her shoulders and walked out of the conference room. Sophie and I followed at a short distance, seeing the rest of the team standing politely near their desks. Lydia, Grace, Nathan, and Zoe said nothing, but their posture radiated quiet protectiveness toward me. Elena paused by the exit, turning to meet their stares. For a split second, she looked like she wanted to say something, perhaps an apology or a final goodbye. In the end, she lowered her gaze and stepped out the door, leaving behind the hum of computer monitors and the faint murmur of office life. When she was gone, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. A hush lingered. Then Lydia spoke softly. That's it. Yeah, I said. That's it. Grace, arms folded, gave me a supportive smile. You okay, boss? I nodded, feeling an odd mixture of relief and sorrow. Better than I expected. Nathan and Zoe approached. Zoe, always the bolder one, grinned. Good riddance, if you ask me. Then she winked, adding, but hey, closure is important. A round of light chuckles went around, diffusing tension. Sophie slid her hand into mine under the table's edge, giving a small squeeze. I squeezed back, heart filled with gratitude for these people who had my back from day one. Just then, a beep signaled a new email on my phone. I glanced at it, some prospective client inquiry. Life marched on, unstoppable. I turned to the team. Thank you, I said softly, meeting each of their gazes. For everything. It's over now. Lydia offered a gentle shrug. We're always here, James. Sophie slipped her arm around my waist, leaning in with a quiet closeness. The rest of them politely turned back to their tasks, giving us a moment. I exhaled, letting the last ghost settle. That evening, Sophie and I walked out of the office together, hand in hand. The city sky glowed with a soft after-sunset pink. As we headed toward my car, I felt an unburdened calm in my chest. The final stand with Elena was done. No lingering property battles, no illusions of reconciliation. I opened the passenger door for Sophie, recalling how not long ago I was drowning in betrayal. Now, I had a woman by my side who truly understood me, who stood witness to my darkest hours and never once wavered. As I slid into the driver's seat, I cast one last glance at the building's glass doors, imagining Elena's silhouette vanishing into the night. Goodbye, old life. I turned the ignition, a gentle hum filling the car. Sophie smiled at me, that warm glint in her eyes that promised a future not defined by heartbreak. I smiled back, shifting into gear. We pulled away from the curb, the city lights stretching ahead like a path of endless possibilities. Tomorrow, I'd wake up free of that final tie to Elena, free to shape my destiny without her shadow looming. And for the first time in a long while, I felt certain that my heart, though scarred, was ready to embrace whatever came next. The morning light filtered through the bungalow's large windows, catching on fresh paint and dust motes. I was in the living room with Sophie, sipping coffee as she held a stack of magazines filled with interior design ideas. She'd been hinting, gently, that the place could use a few more personal touches. I'd insisted that simple and functional was enough, but she seemed determined to coax more warmth into these walls. "Look at this one," Sophie murmured, tapping a photo of a living room with warm earth tones. "We could add a rug, maybe some accent pillows. It'd make this place cozier." I studied the picture. Part of me still hesitated to decorate as if it were a permanent home, but I'd come so far since leaving the condo that it felt right to root myself here, to let my new life truly begin. "I'll admit," I said, "a rug sounds nice, especially for the winter months." She lit up with a smile that reached her eyes. "Perfect. We can go shopping this weekend if you're free." I nodded, sipping my coffee. The quiet buzz of the morning felt almost surreal, like I'd stepped into a calmer reality where heartbreak and betrayal were distant memories. Over the last few months, Sophie and I had grown closer, sharing daily routines and gentle laughter. She spent many evenings here, sometimes leaving only to grab a change of clothes before work the next day. Yet we maintained our independence too. No pressure, no rushing. "Oh," Sophie added, flipping to another page, "we could hang some framed photos. The walls are looking kind of bare." A small pang echoed in my chest. I'd cleared out old pictures after the divorce, and for a while, the concept of displaying photos felt too personal, too vulnerable. But her idea sounded like a step forward, so I said, "Yeah, maybe some new memories." She gave me a searching look, and I realized she was thinking the same thing. It was time to fill this house with the life and color we both deserved. Just then, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. Nathan was calling, which wasn't unusual, but he rarely phoned so early in the day unless there was something pressing at work. I answered, "Hey, everything okay?" Nathan's voice crackled. "Morning, boss. Hate to bug you, but we've got a prospective client who wants an urgent meeting. They're looking for a thorough audit, big contract. Could be a major deal for us." My chest fluttered with a mix of excitement and nerves. Expanding the firm meant more responsibilities, a stronger future for Carter and Associates. "Sounds good. Let's schedule them for tomorrow." He exhaled in relief. "Great. I'll pencil you in for 9 a.m. When I hung up, Sophie tilted her head. "Big client." I nodded. "Potentially. This could mean a jump in revenue and more staff, maybe a new office space." She set aside the design magazine, her eyes bright. "That's huge. How do you feel?" "Nervous, but ready," I said. "We've come a long way since I was drowning in personal drama." Sophie shifted closer, resting a hand on my shoulder. "You're doing great, James." The warmth in her touch steadied me. A year ago, the idea of letting someone into my life after everything that happened would have paralyzed me. Now, it felt like a natural step. We had roots forming here, our daily patterns, quiet dinners, the unspoken comfort of each other's company. And at the same time, I felt a sense of wings, like I was finally free to fly toward my ambitions and a happier future. After breakfast, we decided to visit a local farmer's market. The day was too bright to spend cooped up. I slipped on my jacket, and we drove through tree-lined streets, sunlight dancing across the hood of my car. At the market, stalls bustled with fresh produce, handmade crafts, and the hum of conversation. I recalled how, not long ago, I might have rushed through a place like this without really seeing it. Now, I found myself pausing to smell the rosemary bread, admire the hand-woven baskets, and laugh when Sophie insisted on sampling every flavor of homemade jam. In a slower, more mysterious corner of my mind, I sensed the last remnants of my old self, a man once shattered by betrayal. But each day, that old self felt more like an echo. The grief had burned away, leaving space for new possibilities. I recognized the shift in the way I appreciated small moments, A conversation with a vendor, the rustle of leaves overhead, Sophie's laughter at a silly pun on a chalkboard sign. We ended up buying a small rosemary plant, ironically enough. Sophie teased, "You can keep it on the windowsill. You said you used to dream of a yard with a herb garden, right?" I had, back when I was with Elena. But the idea no longer carried a sting. Instead, it felt like something I could finally enjoy on my own terms. "Let's do it. Maybe I'll actually cook something fancy." She grinned, slipping her hand into mine as we walked back to the car. "I'll hold you to that." Later that afternoon, we returned home and found ourselves arranging the new plant on the kitchen windowsill. Sunlight streamed in, illuminating the small leaves. Sophie reached up, testing the fragrance. "It smells wonderful." I watched her face, the gentle lines of contentment there. A swirl of emotion filled me, gratitude, hope, a warm affection that went deeper each day. We'd come so far, from the dark days when my life was in pieces to this quiet, shared happiness. "James," she said suddenly, as though reading my mind, "do you ever think about the future? Like really think about it?" My heart jumped. I set the watering can aside. "All the time," I admitted softly. Her gaze locked onto mine. "And what do you see?" A flutter of uncertainty and excitement flickered in my chest. "I see a life filled with trust, maybe a family one day, a home that's truly ours." I paused, voice trembling a bit. "I see us, if you want the same." She exhaled, tears threatening to form. "I do," she whispered. "You're not the only one who's been rebuilding. And every time I look around this house, I imagine it full of laughter and maybe kids' voices." My throat tightened with emotion. "We can take it slow, but yeah, I'd like that." Sophie smiled through a sheen of happy tears, stepping into my arms. The rosemary plant filled the air with its fresh scent, mingling with the promise of a shared tomorrow. In the hush of the kitchen, we held each other, letting the moment speak louder than any words. That evening, as we curled up on the couch with a simple dinner, the radio played softly in the background. Outside, dusk settled into the sky, painting it with gentle hues of purple and gold. I felt the day's contentment spreading through my veins. The fear of heartbreak, the memory of betrayal, those things receded in the face of an honest connection. My phone stayed silent, no ghosts from the past. The only sound was Sophie's quiet laughter at some silly show on TV, our knees touching under a shared blanket. I realized then how deeply I wanted this life, stable, welcoming, ours. If there were roots in the form of a stable home and relationship, there were also wings, freedom to dream, to grow my firm, to imagine a future not haunted by illusions, but grounded in reality. And maybe that was the truest testament to how far I'd come. A simple evening in a suburban bungalow, the woman I cared for by my side, and the knowledge that I could embrace love without fear of losing myself. A few days later, Carter and Associates was abuzz with excitement. We'd secured the big client Nathan mentioned. The contract was massive, involving a multi-year engagement to audit a conglomerate's sprawling operations. It was the kind of deal that could catapult us into a higher league. I felt a giddy mix of pride and responsibility. That morning, I gathered the entire team in our largest conference room: Lydia, Grace, Nathan, Zoe, and Sophie, who assisted in project coordination alongside her usual tasks. The table was cluttered with files, laptops, and a whiteboard filled with scribbled notes. I stood at the head of the table, recalling the old me who once felt overshadowed by personal demons. Now, I was calm, focused, ready to lead. "All right, folks," I began, tapping a stack of documents. "This is huge. We have to dissect their accounts, multiple subsidiaries, and a labyrinth of transactions. If we nail this, we'll establish ourselves as the go-to firm for complex audits." Lydia gave me a confident smile, arms folded. "I'm game. Just say the word." Grace tapped her pen on a notepad. "I've already started drafting a schedule. We'll need at least 3 different sub-teams, each focusing on a separate division of the conglomerate." Nathan looked ready to juggle spreadsheets. "Zoe and I can handle the digital infiltration side, understanding their systems, extracting data." Zoe nodded, ponytail bouncing. "Just say the word, boss, and we'll crack open any hidden corners." Sophie, seated next to me, chimed in. "I can coordinate between sub-teams, track deadlines, keep everything organized." She glanced at me with a small, proud smile. We'll run this like a well-oiled machine. I grinned around the table. Fantastic. Let's do a quick breakdown. We spent the next hour mapping tasks, delegating roles. The energy in the room crackled with ambition. I remembered times when I was too overwhelmed by personal turmoil to think clearly. Now, a sense of clarity guided me, like I could see the puzzle pieces of the firm's future clicking into place. Eventually, we concluded the meeting, leaving me alone with Sophie as the others scattered to their tasks. She looked at me with bright eyes. Proud of you. I exhaled, feeling a rush of gratitude. I'm proud of us, more like. Couldn't have done it without your support and everyone's dedication. She slid a hand over mine. Still, you're the glue. That afternoon, I took some time to mentor Nathan and Zoe one-on-one. I found them in an office corner, laptops open, scanning the new client's initial data dump. Zoe was tapping furiously on her keyboard, while Nathan highlighted key figures on a digital ledger. I approached quietly. Hey, how's it going? Zoe swiveled around. We're good, boss. Their data structure is wild, but we can handle it. Might take some advanced macros. Nathan nodded. There's also an older server they still use for certain transactions. We might need to mirror that system. I crouched beside them, pointing at the lines of code Zoe had on her screen. Here's an idea. Let's keep a running log of anomalies we spot. Don't just fix them, document every weird pattern. Nathan whistled. Smart. We can compile it into a specialized report for the client, so they see we're thorough. I smiled, recalling how these two once teased me for being a bit of a perfectionist. Now, they thrived on that attention to detail. Exactly. If we do this right, the client sees we're not just crossing T's and dotting I's. We're saving them from potential disasters. Zoe pushed her glasses up her nose, giving a thumbs up. We got it, boss. Stepping back, I felt a swell of satisfaction. Mentoring them felt natural, like the firm had matured enough to let me focus on guiding rather than just firefighting. For a moment, a memory flickered. Me, alone in a corner office at Titan Development months ago, discovering Elena's betrayal through a telescope. The contrast was stark. Back then, I was unraveling, struggling to keep afloat. Now, I was orchestrating a thriving team with confidence. Lunchtime rolled around, and we piled into a nearby cafe for a quick break. While devouring sandwiches, Grace leaned over, lowering her voice conspiratorially. You know, some people in the industry are talking about Carter and Associates. They say we're unstoppable with the new contract. Lydia smirked. We might start stealing clients from bigger firms if we keep this up. I toyed with my sandwich wrapper. Let's not get cocky, though. The bigger the job, the bigger the risk if we miss something. Sophie gave my shoulder a light bump. Always the cautious strategist. But that's why we'll succeed. Her words warmed me. The conversation turned to light-hearted topics. Zoe's new coding class, Grace's marathon training, Lydia's plan to visit her sister out of state. Normal, everyday chatter that cemented our camaraderie. The firm was more than just a workplace. It felt like family. Late in the day, I retreated to my office to finalize some client proposals. The quiet hum of the AC and the distant murmur of colleagues created a cocoon of focus. As I scrolled through financial spreadsheets, my mind wandered briefly to my father. I wished he could have seen how I'd turned things around. Leading a successful firm, forging healthy relationships, leaving heartbreak behind. But I'd like to think he'd be proud, wherever he was. A knock at my door pulled me from my reverie. It was Grace. We got a call from a journalist at a local business journal. They want to do a profile on Carter and Associates, highlighting how we grew so fast. My eyebrows rose. A profile? Are we ready for that kind of spotlight? She shrugged, excitement glittering in her eyes. We can handle it. It's good publicity. I considered it. Okay, set it up. But let's be sure we control the narrative. Keep it about the team's competence, not just me. Grace grinned. On it. After she left, I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile forming. The firm was hitting a stride I never dared dream of during my darkest days. We'd survived scandal, heartbreak, and personal upheaval, emerging stronger. Each new challenge felt like another piece of the future clicking into place, my father's quiet lessons about perseverance echoing in the back of my mind. As evening fell, the office cleared out, but I lingered to finish a proposal. Around 7 p.m., I realized Sophie was still at her desk, tapping away at a spreadsheet. I walked over, my footsteps echoing in the hushed space. She glanced up, eyes warm. Hey, you're still here too. I nodded, resting a hand on her chair. Let's head out. We've both been at it all day. She rubbed the back of her neck. Just wrapping up. We shut down computers, flicked off the lights, and locked the office. Stepping into the quiet street, a gentle breeze brushed our faces. The city glowed with street lamps, the sky a soft navy. Sophie threaded her arm through mine. Hungry, I smiled, picturing a quiet dinner, maybe at a small Thai place we both liked. Starving. We walked away from the building, my heart light with the knowledge that Carter and Associates was thriving. This triumph wasn't just about me. It was about the collective effort of people who stood by me when I was broken. Now we were forging a path that none of us could have anticipated. We slipped into the little Thai restaurant, the spicy aroma wrapping us in comfort. As we waited for our meal, Sophie's knee brushed mine under the table, and I felt that familiar, steady warmth. In the back of my mind, I knew bigger things lay ahead, for the firm, for us. But in that moment, I soaked in the quiet success, the contentment of doing what I loved with the people I cared about. Outside, neon lights reflected on the sidewalk puddles, reminding me that we were standing at the edge of a vast horizon. The firm's triumph signaled more than just business growth. It was a symbol that, despite life's brutal twists, we had the strength to rebuild. And that knowledge, that victory, tasted sweeter than any revenge or bitterness ever could. A crisp, cool weekend morning found Sophie and me driving out to a small cemetery on the outskirts of town. She offered to join me, and I was thankful for her presence. The drive was quiet, the radio turned low. Fields stretched on either side of the winding road, the sky a brilliant canvas of early autumn hues. When we pulled up to the cemetery gates, my chest tightened with a familiar mix of sorrow and gratitude. It had been a while since I last visited my father's grave. Too busy with the firm, with personal rebuilding, but I knew I owed him a moment of remembrance. I parked under a tall oak, leaves drifting down in lazy spirals. Sophie squeezed my hand once before we stepped out. We walked the well-tended paths, gravel crunching underfoot, passing rows of modest headstones. The air was so still I could hear distant birdsong. My father's grave was marked by a simple, tasteful stone. I knelt, running my palm across the engraved letters of his name. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Memories rushed back, his calm advice when I was a teenager, his steady support during my nightmare of a divorce, the final time I saw him before he passed. Sophie stood a respectful distance behind me, giving me space. Eventually, I pulled a small bouquet of lilies from the paper wrap we'd brought. Placing them gently against the stone, I felt tears prick my eyes. "Hey, Dad," I whispered. "Things have changed a lot since you left." My voice trembled, so I paused, inhaling the scent of earth and grass. "The firm is doing well. I'm heading a big project now. The condo's gone. I've moved on." The breeze stirred, ruffling the lilies. In my mind's eye, I imagined him nodding with quiet pride, that gentle smile never far from his face. "I wish you'd seen this," I murmured. "Me standing on my own 2 feet, not drowning in pain. I'm with someone wonderful." I glanced over my shoulder at Sophie, who gave me a soft, encouraging smile. Turning back, I added, "I'm trying to live fully, like you always taught me." The moment felt heavier than words could convey. All the times I'd wanted to call him for advice or to share good news welled up in my chest. Yet beneath the sadness, there was peace, knowing I was keeping my promise to rebuild, to find happiness again. Sophie approached quietly, resting a gentle hand on my shoulder. "He'd be so proud of you, James." "I'm sure of it." I stood, wiping a stray tear. "I hope so." We lingered a bit, letting the quiet calm of the cemetery settle over us. Sophie kneeled, running her fingers across the lettering, almost as if saying hello in her own way. Something about her gesture filled me with deep affection. She hadn't known my father personally, but she respected his memory as if she had. Eventually, we turned to head back, walking side by side. The sky had shifted to a bright, clear blue, the sun peeking through scattered clouds. It felt like a subtle, reassuring sign that life continued, carrying us forward no matter how big our losses were. On the drive home, we barely spoke, both lost in reflection. Instead of returning straight to the bungalow, we took a detour, stopping at a small overlook that gave a wide view of rolling hills. Stepping out of the car, I gazed at the panoramic vista. Autumn leaves shimmered in the distance, painting the land in warm golds and reds. "It's beautiful," Sophie whispered. I nodded, slipping an arm around her waist. Sometimes I forget to slow down enough to notice. We stood there in companionable silence. My mind flickered to the vow I'd made the day my father died, that I'd find my footing, build a life worth living, embrace each moment. And I realized, with a rush of warmth, that I was doing just that. The echoes of betrayal and heartbreak had softened into lessons, shaping me into someone stronger, more grateful. "James," Sophie said softly, "I want you to know something." She turned to face me, eyes reflecting the hues of the setting sun. "I never want to stand in the way of your healing. If you ever need time, space, or anything, just say the word." My heart clenched. "You're not in the way. You're helping me move forward." She exhaled, relief clear in her face. "I just remember how broken you felt. And now you're so capable. Maybe I'm afraid I'm pushing too fast." I thought of the cemetery, the lilies resting against my father's grave, the fresh wind carrying away old regrets. There's no such thing as too fast if we're in it together. I brushed a thumb across her cheek. "You make me believe in all the things I thought were lost." She leaned in, her lips brushing mine in a kiss tinged with tenderness and quiet promise. For a moment, the world around us fell away. The breeze, the rustling leaves, the distant hum of a passing car. It was just us, two souls finding solace in each other's presence. When we broke apart, the sky had shifted into a soft pastel palette, the sun sinking lower. "Let's head home," she suggested, hands still linked in mine. "We can make dinner. Something simple, maybe pasta." I nodded, feeling that gentle ache of contentment. "Yeah, let's do it." On the drive back, I remembered the final time I spoke with my father, how his eyes shone with pride even when I was at my lowest. I imagined telling him about Sophie, about the success of the firm, about the herb garden we'd started in the kitchen window. He might tease me about being domestic, but I knew he'd approve. Once at the bungalow, we headed inside, the familiar warmth embracing us. While I boiled water for pasta, Sophie chopped vegetables, humming an off-key tune from the radio. The unspoken sense of home, of safety, permeated the air. A subtle moment, but profound in its normalcy. As we sat down to eat, the overhead light glowing softly, I lifted my fork, suddenly remembering the day's visit to the cemetery. He always told me not to lose sight of what matters most. I said aloud, voice thick with emotion. Sophie reached across the table, her fingers curling around mine. "And what matters most is right here, right now." My heart squeezed with gratitude. I squeezed back, letting the moment speak for itself. The dinner might have been simple, just pasta and sauce, a salad on the side, but it tasted like a promise kept, to live fully, to embrace love, to carry my father's wisdom forward. Afterward, we cleaned up side by side, comfortable in the quiet. I felt the last shreds of guilt or regret wash away. Visiting my father's grave had solidified my determination to live with purpose. And now, every step forward felt like an echo of his guidance. As we settled on the couch, the night draped around us, Sophie curled against my shoulder. "I'm proud of you," she murmured. "And I know he is too." I kissed the top of her head, my voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you." In that moment, I was certain that no matter what challenges lay ahead, personal or professional, I was no longer walking alone. My father might be gone, but his legacy pulsed in my resolve, and Sophie's presence lit the path ahead. Rain drummed gently on the bungalow's roof, a steady rhythm that made the evening feel cozy. I stood in the newly decorated living room, flicking through a book of poetry. The lamp cast a warm glow, reflecting off framed photos we'd finally put up. Images of our team's outings, candid shots of Sophie and me laughing in the yard. Sophie was in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner. I heard the faint clatter of dishes, her soft hum. Something about the atmosphere felt charged, like a quiet anticipation. Over the past few weeks, a clear thought had been crystallizing in my mind. I want to spend my life with her. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment impulse. We'd built something real here. Trust, laughter, shared goals. She understood my past without letting it define me, and her presence eased the scars left by betrayal. I thought of my father's advice about living boldly, the forgiveness I'd reached with Elena, the thriving firm. Everything pointed toward a future I never imagined possible. Slipping the poetry book under my arm, I moved to the kitchen doorway and leaned against it. Sophie turned, a playful smile forming. You look deep in thought. I stepped closer, setting the book on the counter. I have something to show you. She glanced at the cover, a slight frown. Poems by Robert Browning? My chest tightened with excitement and nerves. Yeah, there's a particular line I've always liked. I flipped through the pages until I found it. Grow old along with me. The best is yet to be. The words felt like a promise echoing my heart's desire. Her eyes widened as she read, understanding dawning. Oh, James, I exhaled, pulling a small velvet box from my pocket. My hand trembled, but I pressed on. I never thought I'd be here again, wanting to share my life with someone. But I do. And I want it to be you, Sophie. Time seemed to slow. The rain's gentle patter filled the silence. Opening the box, I revealed a simple ring. Elegant, nothing flashy, but full of meaning. I watched her expression shift from surprise to a teary kind of joy. Will you marry me? My voice was quiet, but every syllable carried the weight of my hope and love. Sophie's breath caught, tears glistening in her eyes. Yes, James, of course. She laughed softly, tears spilling over. 1,000 times yes. Relief and elation flooded me. I slipped the ring onto her finger, the fit perfect. She stared at it through watery laughter, then threw her arms around my neck. The poetry book slid off the counter, but we barely noticed. We held each other for a moment, hearts pounding in sync. Eventually, she pulled back, brushing tears from her cheeks. I can't believe it. She laughed again, a joyous sound. We're really doing this. I cradled her face, feeling that calm certainty. We are. The rain continued its soft serenade, like nature's applause. We spent a few minutes just basking in the quiet wonder of our engagement. My mind raced with possibilities, small wedding, or maybe just a private ceremony. We'd figure it out together, step by step. Later that night, we curled up on the couch, the ring glinting on her hand whenever it caught the lamplight. She kept flexing her fingers, marveling at how it felt. I recalled how I once believed my capacity for love had been destroyed. Yet here I was, planning a future not out of desperation, but genuine connection. She turned to me, eyes shining. We should celebrate with the team. They'd go crazy hearing the news. I chuckled, imagining Lydia, Grace, Nathan, and Zoe bombarding us with questions and excitement. They've been hinting for months that we were heading this way. Sophie snorted a laugh. They're more perceptive than we realize. Conversation meandered to wedding ideas. Maybe we'd keep it intimate, just close friends. She joked about Nathan's potential freakout if we asked him to be best man. The image made us both laugh until our ribs ached. Eventually, the laughter faded into a peaceful hush. Rain still fell outside, the windows fogged with the warmth inside. Sophie linked her fingers with mine. James, I love you. My throat closed with emotion. I love you too. In that moment, I let my mind drift over every step that led here. Pain, betrayal, the slow process of rebuilding, my father's passing, the firm's success. Each twist and turn shaped me into the man who could stand here now, unafraid to trust again. The words from Browning's poem floated in my mind. Grow old along with me. The best is yet to be. I believed it deeply. The following morning, we woke early, excitement sizzling under our everyday routines. Before heading to the office, we texted the team in a group chat. Got a surprise for everyone. Meeting at 9:30 in the lounge area. James and Sophie. The flurry of inquisitive responses was immediate. Lydia wrote, "Donuts or big news?" Zoe responded with a string of question marks, while Grace joked about a new client or maybe a secret baby. Nathan just sent a series of exclamation points. When we arrived at Carter and Associates, the team was hovering, curiosity shining in their eyes. Sophie held up her left hand, the ring catching the overhead light. The reaction was instantaneous. Cheers, laughter, congratulatory hugs. Lydia clapped a hand over her mouth, eyes glistening. Zoe jumped in place, squealing, "I knew it." Grace teased me about how he found the right ring. Nathan gave me a hearty handshake that turned into an awkward man hug. The energy was electric, reaffirming that this was the right path. After the initial excitement, I cleared my throat, holding Sophie's hand. "We wanted you all to be the first to know, besides ourselves, because you've been like family." I paused, scanning their proud faces. "Thank you for everything." Sophie laughed, wiping a tear. Seriously, we couldn't have gotten here without your constant support. Lydia grinned. That means a wedding soon, right? I exchanged a quick look with Sophie. We haven't sorted out details, but yeah, we'll keep you posted. Zoe patted Sophie's shoulder. If you need wedding spreadsheets, I'm your girl. Grace nodded sagely. And if you need a strict schedule so James doesn't hide in a ledger somewhere, I'm on it. Nathan raised a celebratory coffee cup in our direction. To James and Sophie, this is the best news all month. A chorus of agreement rippled through the group. The moment pulsed with happiness, overshadowing any old ghosts that once haunted these walls. I realized, with a fresh wave of emotion, that I'd found not just a partner, but a tribe of friends who believed in me. The betrayal I'd suffered before was a distant memory compared to the bright horizon unfolding now. By lunchtime, word had spread, and a few other employees congratulated us in passing. The office buzzed with optimism, talk of the big client we'd secured, and jokes about wedding planning. Sophie and I spent the day in a joyful haze, balancing work responsibilities with stolen glances that made my heart flutter. That evening, we returned home, our home, where the faint scent of rosemary from our windowsill plant welcomed us. The living room felt different, as if it recognized a new milestone in our story. Setting our things aside, we collapsed onto the couch, still giddy from the day's events. Sophie curled against me, her voice low. So, fiancé, what's next? I brushed a hand over her cheek, marveling at the comfort in that word, fiancé. We keep moving forward, step by step, I murmured. Planning a wedding, growing the firm, living each day. A slow smile curved her lips. And trusting that the best is yet to come. I recalled the poem, Browning's line echoing in my mind. Leaning in, I pressed my forehead to hers, breath mingling. Yes, the best is yet to be. In the hush of the bungalow that once symbolized my personal salvation, her ring glinted softly, a testament to new beginnings. And as night settled around us, I closed my eyes, holding onto the warmth of her embrace, knowing in my bones that we had reached a place of genuine hope, a future shaped by resilience, love, and the unshakable belief that no matter how dark the past had been, life could be bright again.